right, here we go. Episode 1. How's it going, Dave?
Going great, man. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Good. I'm getting a little bit of that reverb again still on your mic. I don't know if it's come and go, but we'll work with it. This is Ungovernable. This is the, I don't even want to call it the second generation of Why Libertarian, because it's just, this is like something that it's evolved into, so it's kind of a completely new thing. But I'm really happy that we were able to make this work, and it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about some different stuff. We're going to be talking about some actual practical stuff, along with the theory that I think a lot of Liberty podcasts and vlogs fall into the trap of talking too much about. While Dave gets his mic set up, like, comment, subscribe, share, retweet. If you're watching, we are live on the blockchain, so we're on both Odyssey and Vim TV right now on the Hive blockchain. So if you're on there, definitely upvote us if you're watching on those platforms. And we thank you very much for all of the help if you can help us with the algorithm that way. So anyone who's not familiar with you, Dave, like 30-second intro, who are you?
I'm a teacher, father of 8. I am interested in the liberty/anarchy movement with Blue Star Union. That's actually who we met through Dan's work over there. So that's been great doing all those Liberty podcasts with the book club, and those are a great time. So I figured why not keep it going?
Yeah. No, between the two of us, I got 3. You're way ahead of me. In fact, there's not going to be a 4th one. So between the two of us, we got like a soccer club together. This is good.
That's right.
So anyone who is not familiar with me, if you haven't seen me running my lip in the past, I am Matt. I ran Why Libertarian when it was Why Libertarian. I am now really happy to be contributing to this in conjunction with Dave. And I'm really hoping to get some new stuff out of this. It's like I think a lot of I would love to hear your opinion on this. I think a lot of the Liberty content that's out there it's really like heady, kind of like talking about philosophy and theory, and there's not a lot of practical application stuff out there, right?
I agree 100%. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I guess my role as my profession as a teacher and as a parent, I think it's very obvious to me in day-to-day life that all the talking in the world means absolutely nothing. You got to be able to produce. You got to be able to do something. So, I mean, I hear this excuse all the time from teachers, and it's like the number one excuse a teacher will give is like, kid does badly. Well, I covered that. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. That doesn't mean anything, right? So can the person actually do the thing, or can they not, right? That's what matters. And if you see a lot of people that talk about liberty and freedom and anarchy and all those other things, I think a lot of them, myself included probably, like we don't know actually how to do a lot of the things that we would want to do, right? We know in theory kind of what it should look like, but we don't know exactly how to implement it. And so that's one big reason I want to do the podcast, is not just because I'm going to go and tell everybody else about how it works, but to start having those conversations and start building those communities that people can actually learn how to promote liberty in their life in practical ways.
Oh yeah. And I think me personally, I identify a lot of areas where I need improvement on, and as has been part of my journey all along, like as I kind of like find new things or work on new things, I want to bring people along with me, right? So this is also kind of self-serving in a way that it gives me a reason to like try and learn new skills and things like that, and obviously make content based off of that, so that I'm kind of like pulling double duty and really kind of figuring it out. And I think a lot of people got I don't want to use the word radicalized. I think a lot of people got disenfranchised with the world around them over the last like 18 months, and they just didn't know where to go with it, right? Like there was a lot of like fervor and like anger, and people thought they needed to scream at the out into the void or whatever. But the problem now becomes, all right, like, well, what's next, right? Like people identified things are screwed. So how do you unscrew them, right? And I think that's really that's the direction we want to head in. What are you looking forward to talking about the most? I mean, there's an entire wide range of topics that we can talk about.
Yeah, well, I guess my biggest passion is abolishing public schools, and I don't think you do that again by systems approach of making it illegal to have public schools like that. I mean, that would be great, but I think the more important thing is getting people just to leave the system. Right? Like I preach this over and over and over again, but like in New Jersey, there's no legal mandate that's enforceable that the government can have you to send your kids to school, and there's no checkup. There's literally nothing. You just call them up and say, yeah, they're not coming forward. Don't even call them at all. Like, you don't have anything you need to do. And all the time, people are complaining, oh, I can't. What am I supposed to do? There's no options. There's literally nothing. There's literally do nothing. And you're in compliance with state law. So I mean that's different than in Pennsylvania, where parents are always struggling to satisfy whatever random county executive or whoever person. There's a lot of state laws that you have to follow. With checks on parents. In New Jersey, there's literally nothing. And how many people take advantage of it? Very few. So it's not that we need to have rules or new laws. I mean, I think we do to a certain extent. I think that follows action of individuals. People just stop sending their kids there, and it becomes nuisance. The speed limit works the same way. Everybody goes 10 over. People get stopped. People get stopped. It's against the law. But you don't get stopped. Because everybody does. It is true. Everybody does. Everybody knows. The laws are going to follow. Right?
Yeah. No, it's the strangest thing. Like me living in New Jersey, there's obviously a ton of things that I could complain about in terms of how this state is run. Our just the last handful of administrations have given us more than enough to complain about. But the strange thing is that the one area where there seems to be this true freedom is in the education of your children, where you don't even have to, file a curriculum with the state and have them sign off on it. You don't even have to allow the state to track your kid, which in some states I think that's kind of like the one thing where you have to file paperwork that says oh well, you're being a good parent and actually educating your kid. We know where they are. To which the anarchist, the hairs on the back of my neck are like, screw you. You don't have to know where my kids are. They're not your kids. They're my kids. I get to know where they are. But it's the weirdest thing. It's New Jersey is the freest state in the country with respect to this one thing, and it's homeschooling or however you choose to kind of educate educate your children, right? And so I find it really strange that more people before this didn't take advantage of it. Maybe it's like that good old shoe kind of thing where it just kind of fits right and people don't want to rock the boat. But during COVID, they sure as hell started to take advantage of it because they got tired of all of the shenanigans that were happening around the pandemic. And quite frankly, I think of all the topics that we're going to talk about, I think education is probably the core, right? With all of the BS that we see as the problems that have kind of culminated within the recent past, education is the foundation. It is the most fundamental aspect of what creates a culture and a society and a community. And that educational piece, ultimately, I don't think the state should have any hand in it. I know some people will come up with some arguments for, and maybe we'll have these conversations in the future, have some arguments for, well, certain groups of kids might need some kind of centralized option or something like that. And we can discuss the merits of that argument. But I think by and large, the state should have absolutely no hand in educating the young within the country for a multitude of reasons. But so you spent some time in the public school system as a teacher, right?
That's right. Yeah.
What was that time like?
It's funny. I was just talking about this to someone else earlier. I think. Someone's complaining about my microphone again. Should I unplug it? Do you think, or just
yeah, you can unplug and try and reset it. Here, I'll also pull you out of the stream, put you back in.
Okay.
Let's see if that fixes it a little bit. Oh,
Can you hear me all right now?
yeah, we got you now. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, I was talking about this earlier to one of my friends who came to visit me at work, actually. I absolutely loved my time teaching in public school. I thought it was um, good work, right? Like do your work, feels good,
Hmm.
get your money, all that, right? So like that type of good, hard, honest work, I felt was definitely a good place to be. I enjoyed the work. I felt I had a unique voice and unique opportunity to present to a lot of the guys I had in my classroom. There was the biggest problem with the public school system, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of practical ability to teach there, is just like the administration makes it impossible to do your job. So they go out of their way to not have good teachers. As the same thing we always talk about with police officers, is like it's not that like people go into be a police officer because they want to be a bad guy and trample on people's rights. Generally speaking, that's not true. I don't think. It's like it's nearly impossible to do a good job once you get there, because the people that are in the hierarchy force you to act a certain way, to hide certain things, to cover certain things up, to go after certain people for certain things, and you just can't do your job. So you either get with the program and you decide, okay, fine, I'm not going to be a good person. I'm not going to apply laws equally or whatever. Or in the case of education, right? I guess I don't care about educating children or having them grow and all the good things that we want to see for our children. And I'm just going to do whatever this person tells me so that he can maintain power, and in turn I get a paycheck. And I can make excuses to myself the whole time that, oh, this is necessary for whatever reasons. And you know what? Maybe there are people that are in those situations. I don't know. But I know for my situation, it was essentially impossible for me to do my job with any integrity whilst also maintaining my job. So I could have been sneaky, right, and lie about what I was doing or whatever. Like I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to tell them everything, but when they tell me to do a certain thing, and I don't think that's best for the students, that I just told them, like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like that's fine. You can find someone else to do that, you know?
Yep.
So that was I have a lot of great memories there. A lot of the teachers I worked with, I had some good administrators. I've talked about some of those experience on Blue Star Union with Dan also. But I think the thing that being a teacher in public schools really changed my, I guess I had a unique perspective on it because I did enjoy it, because I did have a lot of other teachers I worked with that I respected a lot, that were good people who really wanted to, make a difference and all that, right? And be good teachers, right? One of my administrators in Newark, Mike D'Antonio, was like just the best guy ever you could ever imagine working for in a public school. And that was in Newark public schools, right? And people are always like complaining about Newark public schools or crap and all those other things. And like, yeah, there's all these other problems, but there were teachers that were problems there. I remember, I could tell you 1,000 stories, but just Mike asking some guy, a teacher, to assign homework. Like, can you just do anything? And he was like, no, I'm not going to do anything. He's like, can you just I'll give you the assignments, just have to put them on the board. He's like, no. Like, he literally would do nothing. He had no ill will towards him. He was just like, no, why would I do that? Like, you can't force me to do anything, and I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to come to work every day at this time and leave at this time, and that's it. He was completely jaded about the thing, and he had tenure, and he knew there's no way he's ever losing his job. He was just like, yeah, no, I'm not doing anything.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, I loved it there. I ended up moving along from there after teaching in public schools for 4 years, and now I teach at a private boys' school outside of DC, and I love teaching there also. So, I mean, at the end of the day, teaching is teaching. People always ask me, like, oh, that must be such a big difference, because I taught in the inner city, at public school, big public school, to more small town city area in Denellen, New Jersey, and then now I teach at all boys private school that cost a lot of money to go to. And like at the end of the day, the actual teaching in the classroom is very similar. Like, kids are kids, right? Like there's not a huge difference. The big difference is all the other things, the family structure that's there, the administration there, what they're doing outside of school, and all those things. But I love teaching, and it's pretty much the same type of activity in all these different places.
Yeah.
That's one of the things.
I'm actually getting a little
feedback
with your speaker. But so anyway, that's one of the things that I think we can continue to build upon in terms of like what you were saying with the teaching is teaching, right? Like, and we're not going to tell you that like good teachers are just falling off of trees, right? Like that's not the argument here, and that's not the argument for or against, in my view, public education. The argument really hinges upon what you were talking about in terms of the administration, the artificial hierarchy that gets built within the educational system, and then just that the conditioning that happens. Like I would call it grooming, right? Like the grooming to be, and we can get all nerdy on it and talk about how the U.S. education system is basically built off of Prussian factory workers, but the grooming of turning little kids into essentially productive worker bees that are compliant. They know the hierarchy and not to fight against it, right? Like this is the hierarchy. Do not break ranks. Do not think that you can, raise hell or anything like that. Just kind of keep your head down and move forward. And it kind of creates almost like I wouldn't call it a caste system, but it creates this extremely, kind of set structure for the future of those kids' lives. And most people are like, oh, well, they need that, right? Like that's the foundation. That's how they become a productive member of society. And you're like, well, you understand that there's probably just as much, if not more, that's holding them back from them getting that education than it's setting them up to be successful. I was actually just thinking about this before, and I don't know, like, this kind of like came to me like I'm just, like throwing spaghetti against the wall. And I was wondering, all right, bad education versus no education, right? Like, I'm almost thinking that no education is better than a bad education, or maybe I have to rephrase that and kind of say like a education that's essentially just indoctrination, right? Like, I would rather someone just kind of like be free to the wind and what's the phrase, like the school of hard knocks, than be part of this kind of like very top-down oppressive system that's in place right now.
I think what you're talking about is natural, right? Natural education, meaning, right? Like I learned that when I drop something on my foot, it hurts, right? Like you have to do those sort of things. Like I learned that trees grow big leaves, or like the sun comes up every morning. Like these are things that we learn, right? Because they're natural. And so that's inevitable that we're going to learn those types of things. And I think if the more you take a person away from nature, the less it becomes something that's objectively true. And the more it becomes, this is true because you told me this is true. And so I just have to do that. And I think that's one thing that school does. One of the things that drives me nuts is when people say like, oh, the public schools or schools in general, if you don't send your kid to schools, they're going to be sheltered. Like, well, if anything is the exact, like school is literally a shelter. That's what it is, right? Like the basic English word of a shelter is like a place that you go to like hide from other things. That's what a school does. It keeps kids away from nature and away from the adult world where they could be taken advantage of and all those other things. Like there's reasons why someone might want to shelter children. I would want to shelter my kid. Every good adult should want to shelter their child and protect them from danger, right? Like that's what you're supposed to do as an adult. And that idea is somehow like it's bad to shelter your children and protect them is craziness. Secondly, the idea that a public school is somehow not a shelter is crazy, right? Like that, it doesn't work like just basic English definition wise, right? So like you keep kids away from the school of experience, the school of encountering nature and encountering natural consequences for actions. And so all it becomes is, okay, in this class, I can't do that because Mrs. Whoever will punish me, right? Like it's not the natural effect of if I drop this on my foot, it will hurt, right? Like those natural consequences.
It's completely freaking arbitrary.
Correct. Yeah. And so those things are sometimes necessary. Like I don't want my kid to learn the lesson not running into the road by getting smashed by a car, right? So sure, I need to punish them. I need to provide that consequence that's artificial so that they don't have the natural consequence, right? But sometimes like, your kid's got to touch a hot oven and be like, oh crap, I'm not going to do that anymore, right? You never touch the hot oven twice. I mean, I remember touching a radiator when I was like 4 years old. So one of my earliest memories, like seared in my memory of like touching that hot radiator and just pain forever, right? Because at that age, it was literally the worst pain I ever had in my life, probably, right?
Yep.
But if I were to go touch a radiator it was on a lawnmower today, a lawnmower off and had been for a couple hours, I'm still like not going to put my finger completely on it, right? I'm going to like barely touch it because I'm like, it could burn me, right? Like you learn those lessons, they're ingrained in your mind. Same with electric, right? I got shocked by electricity. So I check it all the time. Like I got to make sure it's off. I got to double check. And even though I know it's off, because I just checked, I still am like very careful about it, right? So you learn those types of things naturally, and the school pulls you away from those natural consequences, and so everything becomes artificial, and to follow that, right, everything becomes just human imposed, right? Like, this is the way it is because this person decided, which makes it all about power, right? Which completely describes what we're up against. Like, that is the enemy, right? That's the Sauron eye of the tower, right? Like, that idea that like we're gonna just like wield power and domination over other people. That's what the school exists to do, in my opinion, right? That's the sine qua non, or whatever you want to call it, raison d'etre, right, of the school, is like to impose that type of domination and power on others. And they do it with the sense of, oh, this is for their own good. If they don't have this, then how are they ever going to make it in the world, and all right? And we can get into all those types of things, but like, that's the thing that it does. It causes people to just like give in to this type of power and just to accept it. This is the way the world is. These people have power. The way of the world is to get power over other people. And the more power you have over the people, the better you are. And that explains all of our politics. It explains all the way that people react to problems. Like, oh, there's a problem in my city. What should I do? I know. I should go talk to the person who has the ring and tell them that they should not punish me as much, right? Instead of, is there anything you can do to solve this? No. That's never an option, right? I have to go vote harder or write a letter or do some other thing, instead of like, oh, okay, there's a problem here. What do I do to solve this?
Yeah. No, that is completely spot on. It's like the process completely dominates the substance, right? Or the what the true nature of things should be. Laney's saying, totally agree. Arbitrary rules or consequences don't really teach. And then our first guest coming up in a couple of minutes is chomping at the bit, so I guess he can't help himself. But Mike Rufo saying, observation and experience are the parents of all teachers. And then I'm going to throw one more quote up here. So this was earlier on when we just started getting going. John Taylor Gatto talks about implementation of unschooling with a few examples. And we'll talk through the different types of, like, there's homeschooling is this very broad topic that gets used. And I titled today deschooling, and even that's a different thing. There's unschooling. There's a bunch of different kind of like thought processes out there. But talks about unschooling with a few examples. And there's a couple of titles there, For the Sake of Our Children and Hard Times in Paradise. I think that also leads into kind of like, to sum up this, what I'm hoping will come of this program is, I really have this theory that, and maybe it's not, it's probably not my theory. I've probably gleaned it from someone else. Weak people, weak peoples end up with weak leaders. It just, that's the way it goes, right? Like, if you have a weak constitution, you typically end up with leadership that does one of two things. It either mirrors who you are as a people, or it lends itself for some kind of shyster to come in and essentially, make you think that they are mirroring you as a people, when really they're just kind of pulling one over on you. Right. And the present state of things, not just in the U.S., but throughout the world, is I think we have a plethora of those two things. Right. Like, gone are the forthright statesmen of yore that we used to think of as our leadership. Now we have a bunch of grifters and celebutants and some really evil freaking people that are in the leadership positions. And I really think it comes from that. I use the word weakness. I'm not trying to like talk down on people or anything like that, but the Greek idea of basically what it is to live a good life and to be like a strong individual, right? Is I don't think reflected well in the American people, or the people of a lot of the industrialized countries on the planet right now. And I think it reflects itself in its leadership. Am I being a little too harsh there?
I don't think you're being too harsh. I think that it's wise for you to point out, I think, that leaders are reflective of the broad amount of society, and the cream rises to the top and all these types of things, right? And I think, but I do think, I guess, that ultimately these people should be irrelevant to our lives. Yeah. And in most cases they are, if you just like ignore them. Like, you're going to ultimately do reasonable things, right? I think that's one thing that annoys me about kind of the rhetoric of the history, right? If you look at the Middle Ages or you look at some other time period, like, wow, like Augustus Caesar was an emperor. He could do whatever he wanted. Like, okay, yeah, but for the average Roman, they could care less who he was, right? Like, not on him, right? The normal monarch of the Middle Ages had like absolute power, some people would say, but the average citizen could care less. He didn't have police like going to their house, checking everything they did. Did you go too fast down the road? Did you do whatever? Like they didn't have that, right? They didn't have prisons for like ever, right? Like until very, very recently, we didn't have prisons. So that's completely a world that no one can imagine, right? Like that. What happens then if you do something wrong or whatever? Like, don't we have to put you in a cell forever? Like, I mean, yeah, and sure, did they use other different punishments and things like that? Sure, they did, right? But it's just very hard for us to get our mind around this idea that, like, people just generally the state, quote unquote, right? The people that had power were just like, yeah, there's not much I can do here, right? Like, I might want to impose this rule, and I might even say this is the rule, but there's really not much I can do about that, right? Other than to say that I think this is what should happen.
Yeah, and that the other aspect of that is like, say you are an upstart, right? Like, say you didn't toe the company line, say that you didn't drink the Kool-Aid, right? And you look at the leadership and you're like, these guys aren't doing well, right? You have to have the standing or the rapport or that kind of like forthright nature to be able to call someone out, and not be a hypocrite for it, right? Like, you can't be the drunk calling out someone else for over drinking, right? Like, you can't be that person. And so that's something else I hope that we get out of this is, and by we, I mean I myself would like to become a stronger individual, and hopefully as we talk through, our kids' education, hopefully as we talk through, aspects of maybe, self-sustaining, food development and being able to grow your own food, or 3D printing technology, or decentralized finance and everything that comes with that. As we talk through all these myriad of issues of being able to kind of like stand on your own 2 feet, I hope it helps people develop tools and resources and skills so that, the name of the show is freaking Ungovernable, right? And it's not, nihilistic zombie apocalypse, end of the world, we all kill each other, right? Like, that's not what it's called. It's called Ungovernable from the standpoint of, if you, like, people are always going to have leaders, but if you choose to follow a leader, how do you know a good leader from a crappy one? Well, if you yourself are a crappy person, okay, you're not going to be able to determine between the two. And so really that's the point of it, is to develop those skill sets and those tools to say, you know what, I can opt out when I want to. I have the ultimate ability to opt out from the system. But if I do choose to participate in any kind of organized system, I'm participating from a standpoint where I actually have some leverage, I have some knowledge, I have some standing to be able to make a really accurate determination of, what's positive and what's going to be negative in my decision making. And, hopefully don't end up, falling prey to demagogues who make you think that they're the alpha when truthfully all they are is, someone who's trying to take advantage of you. So,
you see this all with, what we would teach our daughters about how to pick a good husband, right? Like, we all know examples of young girls who get tricked by some complete idiot who's just taking advantage of her, who doesn't have her best interest at heart, and is just telling her a good game and whatever else. And everybody that is just a little bit older than her knows exactly what's going on here, right? Like, this guy is not a best interest. He is going after you, doesn't care about you. Oh no, he loves me and he's going to leave his wife, or whatever stupid story they say, right? It's like, like you said earlier, like, education, right, is really the protection again. Like, if you're like not a moron and your parents brought you up right, or the other people that you have good friends, right, and all those other types of things, like, there's no chance you're getting taken advantage of by this dude, right? You're like, yeah no, like, and that's another thing school prevents us from doing. It prevents us from building proper relationships with our family members, right? So that I do have a really good friend that can look out for me, right? This came up with like the sex abuse crisis in the Catholic Church. Like, I'm a Catholic. I'm very concerned that this is a problem. And one thing that I think is completely terrible in the way they're solving this is they're telling everybody all the priests, all the seminarians, like, basically never be around young men.
Hmm.
Like, this is the worst you could ever do.
Yeah.
Because any young man who's now in a problem or he's like doesn't know what to do has no one to go talk to, right? If you have a young man a young boy who's 13 and someone's trying to predate him, and he has lots of good older friends that are in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, whatever, an uncle that's a good friend. He has a good relationship with his dad, right? He has other good friends that are looking out for him. No, I can't say never, but like I can only imagine how less likely that person is going to be predated, because I know that person has a strong group of people that someone's going to come and murder me in the middle of the night, right? Like if you go after someone who doesn't have that type of structure and doesn't have people they can talk to, and we all know this, right? This is typical predatory behavior. Go after someone who doesn't have strong connections, who isn't going to be able to stick up for themselves, isn't going to be able to talk to somebody else, right? Which is why you have higher levels of abuse in relationships with people that are outside of power. So, I mean, they do exactly the wrong thing by saying, oh yeah, I know, we'll just like make everything separated so that you can't ever be with those people and whatever else. Like, those are the exact people that are going to protect you, right? And if we're afraid of abusive dads or abusive uncles or whatever else, like, we need to have better dads, we need to have better uncles, we need to have better men in society who are going to do these things, and obviously better women. If I want a woman to be a good spouse and be able to choose a good husband and be able to raise good kids, like, she better be smart, right? She better know her shit. She better
and it goes beyond gender roles too, right? Like I think the right gets mixed up in this, and this is like a whole other show, but it goes just beyond gender roles too. The just the concept of what it is to be, someone who can stand on their own 2 feet, is something that in a lot of core kind of attributes is regardless of whether you're male or female or what kind of role you have within a relationship or a family unit, right? But yeah, I mean, all of that stuff goes into it, and hopefully we can get there. We can find that common thread where we're building at least some of those aspects of positive skill sets and tools and things like that, and bringing that to table for folks, and hopefully introducing some people to some of those things that they haven't been introduced before, especially if it's been something that they've been fearful of, or maybe it has seemed like too big of a hill to climb for them, and we can kind of give them some bite-sized ways to at least kind of like get involved in it, or get involved into a community that can help. So, all right, we got Rufo here. I think we're catching him on vacation.
I put this on just for you, bro. Come on. What's going on, bro?
Coming to us from Hawaii. Mike, how's it going, man?
What's going on, boys? It's been a minute. It's absolutely been a minute. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we got you. Yeah, we got you. So, before we get rolling with Mike's line of questioning here, Laney's saying, true, the general public accepts mediocre leaders due to their own indoctrination, trained to bow down to authority without question. Matt McAndrew, I donated my beard to Rufo. He took it on. I got rid of it. It's really hot. It got way too scratchy, but Mike's holding up the average for us here on this trio.
I got enough beard for all of us. Let's go. What's the matter, Frankie? Come on. This is it.
So, all right. We are talking about education, avoiding indoctrination camps, government indoctrination camps. Mike, you've been a big advocate of getting away from the centralized education system. What's a little bit of your backstory in terms of homeschooling and education and kind of your personal beats on that?
So my daughter has never been enrolled in public education from the jump, just because I never believed in the state being in complete control of my daughter's education. We were in private school for preschool and kindergarten and first grade. COVID happens. I'm literally, one of the luxuries of being in private school is you can actually like speak to the principal and have real conversations and get a hold of administrators and figure out what they're going to be planning. So that's one degree of separation from the state, where you can actually have a say in what happens in your child's education and be in the loop. And I didn't like the answers I was getting about the way they were going to be operating the school. So basically at that point, I started doing research on, all right, what homeschooling programs are out there to help me teach my daughter. And I did research, like you were saying, about how does it work in New Jersey? Does she got to take standardized testing? Do I have to do anything? Do I have to report to the local board of education? Do I have to do anything? And everything was like, nah, you're on your own. The only thing you got to do is prove you're doing it if somebody calls you out. So if somebody calls, the only thing in Jersey is if somebody like calls and says you're not educating, if somebody rats on you and says you're just on vacation all the time, you're not doing, like you have to like prove that you're doing something. Like the kid learns something, but it's not even like, there's not even a standard formal test for that either. It's just here, yeah, this is what we've been reviewing. So at that point, I found K12.com, which had a pretty nice, affordable, relatively affordable program that I could use to help teach her things. And I've never taught anybody anything. I've never taught kids anything. I didn't know the right way. So it comes like a teacher's book that teaches you how to like explain things and use terms that they're gonna do well with. And it ended up being a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. You know, from the hours of like 9 to 12, we were able to hammer out school, and whatever we needed to go through. It was only like the 4 core subjects: language arts, math, history. We did art, and then I did my own little thing throughout the day. Obviously, right? I would take like real world scenarios, and we would tie it into what we were learning, and we would do all this other stuff. And I was more involved with her education and teaching her, even outside of the normal school hours, than I had ever been before, right? Like, because you never know what they're learning in class. And so they're like, oh, what you do in school today? I don't know. I don't remember. Johnny said this. Sally said that. You don't really get an idea as to what's happening in the classroom. But when you're actually teaching everything, and if you're following a program to try and keep them on pace with the traditional set, then you know what's going on. You know what you're teaching them, and you know what you just went over. You know that you taught them how to group 5 things of 3, so that when you're out in public and there's 5 groups of 3 grouped out there naturally. Oh, look, how many is there? And then they do the math real quick, right? Like that's the stuff that really boils down to it. But the last year's been eye-opening when it comes to education. Like it's not nearly as hard as you would imagine. She reads just fine. Thank you. I did a great job. You know, like it wasn't that bad.
No, that's awesome. You had to make a lifestyle change too, right? Like there was not. I think what a lot of people will say is, oh well, myself and my wife, we both have to work. We have to, do a certain number of hours. We have to make a certain amount of money, especially in a state like New Jersey where it's freaking ridiculously expensive to live. You actually had to make a lifestyle change in order to accommodate this, right?
I made huge lifestyle changes. So I went from a very comfortable 6-figure job with managing a car dealership with a group of people that I had known for 15 years, was doing great, had given me everything I have in life up to now. I was fortunate that my wife had just got her nursing degree and had just started nursing 2 weeks before all the lockdowns. Wow. So I took a step back, started selling life insurance, which I've pulled back even further on that recently as well. And my wife basically took over that one role because now she works overnights 3 days a week. Everything is handled that way. She's home 4 days a week. I'm home every day. I'm still working, just not nearly as much. And we really stepped back. We don't go out as much. We spent a lot of money on crap we didn't realize we don't need to spend money on, right? And then recently I took advantage of the housing market. I saw, hey, the housing market's insane, especially in New Jersey. You got all these people coming from New York City, coming down, spending crazy money on houses. And I said, I can sell my house, become debt-free, have a chunk of money, move to another state, and have even less to worry about and really be able to control my life and control where my daughter is going to get educated and how she's going to get educated. So yeah, I made a huge lifestyle change. I just sold my house, as part of the lifestyle change, but
now I get it. Now I understand why you're dressed the way that you are. You live in a Winnebago and you think you're Cousin Eddie. Like that's the way it is.
And that's the last part of it, right? We bought a camper. And we said, you know what, we're gonna take this teaching my daughter thing one step further. And we had a conversation a few weeks ago where the 3 of us were all in the chat and we're talking, and It was, yeah, it's not educating your kid, it's raising your kid. Right? Like, you're the only one raising your child. You take the decision that I'm going to be the only one raising your child. It's not a bad thing to outsource raising your kid. We use our family members for it. We use our friends for it, their grandparents, all of that. Some people choose to use the state. The state is my enemy. Therefore, I will never allow my enemy to have agency, have decision over what happens in my child's life. But I've decided that I want to be the one responsible for raising my child. I want her to, if she wants to go to her grandfather's house, I want her to go there because she wants to go hang out with her grandfather. Not because, hey, Dad, listen, I really need you to take her for the day. I got this, that, and this, and this is what we're like. I want to make our life so that we can live off of one income. And if that means leaving New Jersey, if that means selling the house, like, whatever that means we have to do, I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to live to what everybody else's standard of what should happen anymore. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to take those brave, bold steps, and we're going to experiment here. We're going to try crap, and we're going to live our own lives freely. And we bought the camper, and we're going to spend the next 3 months camping all around the state. She's going to learn all different things about the outdoors and all kinds of fun stuff, and she's just going to have a blast. I'm going to give her the summer of her life, and then we're going to buy a lot of land in West Virginia, build a cabin, and then buy another lot of land in Florida and get the hell out of here.
All right, well, that's going to be a future episode, so you're definitely coming back to talk about that one. We're going to talk more about homesteading and stuff, but let me tee this one up for you, Dave. Some of the conversation that we had leading up to this episode, you had brought up something that was extremely poignant. And it had to do with the use of the word homeschool, right? You basically said, why would you ever want to turn your home into a school? Just kind of elaborate on that one, Dave.
Yeah, well, that's you guys are triggering me when you say that. It's a real sticking point with me, and I think it's probably where people that are interested in not sending their kid to school are going to number one go wrong, right? So Mike was just saying we did a couple hours at maybe, I don't know what you're working exactly, but yeah, maybe some workbooks, some more formal type of thing. But then of course, we went out into the world and saw things and did that. And it seems to me, at least from, I don't want to put words into his mouth, but that there was a lot more to her education in his eyes than just, oh yeah, we're going to do that whatever. If you try to, I'm not speaking clearly, 8 hours, I'm going to do 8 hours of school at home, right? I'm going to make them wake up at 8, and then they're going to get their breakfast. That's from 8 to 8:20. And then they're going to sit down at the table and they're going to do math from 8:20 to 4. And then they're going to finish that and they're going to do history from 9 to 9:40. And then they're going to go to do this play activity that's scheduled for 45 minutes. And they're going to do that, right? That idea of trying to implement a school approach into your house is preposterous. Now, what Mike is doing is nothing I would ever call school, right? I tell my kids all the time, oh, hey, this is a cool book. Go check it out. Work on that for a while or whatever else. You're being an idiot. Go in the other room and do something else that I'm telling you to do because you're disrupting me or you're being mean to your sister. No, you need to go read things. You haven't read anything. Go to the other room and go read something, right? That type of, that's not school, right? That's just being a parent. And so if you have certain sets of books, you know what, you're kind of bad at math right now. You need to be learning some more algebra, right? I don't know. This doesn't seem where you're at. Okay, we're gonna get a plan here. Right now, my son is 6 and he's still trying to get better at reading. A couple of my other kids were pretty good reading way earlier than that. So I'm okay, no, I really want you to get this. So every day we're gonna make sure that no matter what you do reading every single day. So I want you to get better at this, and he wants to get better at it, right? So that's a formal thing that I'll go out of my way to make sure we do every single day. But I don't think there needs to be this 10-month curriculum. We follow this lesson plan. We hit all these different things, and this is the exact order. Not only because it's a terrible way to educate your kids, just from an effectiveness standpoint, but also it takes away the most important thing that a kid needs to have, which is a parent. If you are a teacher, an educator, a school marm to your child, and almost in many cases, this is mom doing this, right? You've now taken away the child's mother. right? Like their mother is now like their fifth grade teacher. Like, no. Like, you can't take away a child's mother, right? You can't take away a child's father, right? They need to have those role models and those people in their life, a place they can go home, right? I mean, I went to public school, and no matter what school you go to, like, I think people need to be able, like, I need to go home because that was a crappy day, and that teacher was an asshole to me, and these kids were being mean to me or whatever. So I just need to go home and chill, like be with my mom or my dad and play a game and not have to worry about whatever that stress was, right? And like, I think it can be very difficult for a child if their parent is like, oh no, I need to be your school teacher. And now, like, school teachers sometimes need to be an ass to the student, right? Because like there's attention or whatever else, right? And like, you need to get this done. It's, come on, you got to get to it, right? And they're not. And then like, okay, but now who do I turn to, right? Like, this is my dad or my mom who's like giving me a hard time because I'm not doing my thing right. And now, like, who do I go to for comfort, right? Like, who do I go to? Yeah, go ahead, Mike. You want to say something?
So that those moments happened many of times early in the year, where it was I would be getting frustrated that she wasn't doing what we had scheduled, and I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I've got all day. And that's when I started stepping back from working even more. I was like, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. We've got these. I've changed the schedule where I literally, like, I still wanted to follow the program, obviously. Right? I wanted to be able to measure her progress in learning because she is 8. She doesn't need to know to do certain things, right? So I'm like, all right, so let's measure her progress. The math, I didn't have to worry about. I've stored a book. I do everyone there. Do some math right now. I just need you to do math for the next hour. Just do these couple of pages, and then we would move on, right? But then there would be like reading. We've had a road with reading and learning how to read, which is fine because, as everybody knows who watches the Blue Star book clubs, I do struggle myself at times with having to read aloud. So I'm going to just say it's a bit of a genetic thing, all right? I'm just saying that the reading out loud stuff is difficult. So she even tells me, I'm reading it in my head, Daddy. It's easier. Okay, cool. That's fine. Whatever.
Right.
But there was moments where we would have that, like, I'm getting frustrated. And I learned, like, you know what? Turn it off. Let's go to the park. Let's go have some fun. And then I would try to sneak the lesson in while we were at the park, right? And it was fun, right? And like Julius Caesar, for example, we're doing history, right? And she's learning about Julius Caesar and beware the Ides of March. I got married on March 15th because the joke, beware the Ides of March, right? That was like the whole run up to the wedding was beware the Ides of March. That was the whole shtick, right? So I taught her about beware the Ides of March using Mommy and Daddy's wedding. And now anytime she hears Julius Caesar, she's like, beware the Ides of March, Daddy.
Right.
Dude, I can't stress how amazing of an educational difference that is between that and just rote memorization, right? Like, being able to take that and put it into something that's relatable, and it's not just relatable, it's something that's personalized for the kid. That's something that they will remember with a much higher retention than something that they've just repeated over and over and over and over again.
And I realized that about halfway through the year, and that's when the whole daddy's school, whatever, it completely changed. Like, it just changed. And we still followed the program, but it was much more loose, much more relaxed, and just integrated. Like, we'd wake up in the morning, hey, let's read this. Hey, you know what? We haven't done any spelling this week. We got to get at least one. We got to learn how to spell some words. Here, do me a favor. Read these words a few times each, and then we'll play some games. And that would be it. But if you're trying to, and they did this with the Zoom schools, right? The public schools and the teachers unions, they told the parents, you need to make sure that it's the same regimented process that we have here at school. They have to wake up and eat their breakfast like they're coming to school. Then they have to do, and no, that doesn't work. And that's why all these parents hated it, right? And I think they did it on purpose. I am telling you, these teachers unions and the government did it on purpose so that people would think it's a lot harder to teach their kids than it really is.
Yeah, no, I think that the idea that tons of people have, and I know just from my experiences, my mom, my wife homeschools, and then she knows a lot of other homeschooling mothers and stuff. So is like, there's this anxiety, right? Of like, am I keeping up with the people downstairs that are in the public school and whatever else? And like, they're learning this, and are they going to learn that or whatever else? And like, I try to tell my wife all the time, like, you don't understand. This is a myth. The people over there are not learning anything. So like, if you can teach your kid anything today, they've already advanced far more than like almost any other kid's going to advance for that entire week. And then I remember her telling me, we've had this conversation about, I teach chemistry and physics. And she's like, well, like, what about when they're older? Like, how are they going to learn chemistry? And I'm like, okay, first off, did you take chemistry? She's like, yeah. I'm like, and you're a good student, right? You got an A? She's like, yeah, of course. And I'm like, okay, how much chemistry do you know? She's like,
what's a covalent bond?
Listen, let me tell you something.
Chemistry, right? Unless like you're actually into it, right? Like you don't know any chemistry, and you very well likely could have gotten an A. Most of the friends that she has that are homeschooling mothers probably got A in chemistry also, because there's those type of people that get good grades in school. And like, but like the idea that you would be somehow anxious that your kid might not learn chemistry and that would somehow hold them back in life, when you yourself should have the realization that you know no chemistry and still took the class and got an A in it or whatever. It was like, shouldn't that ring some like, oh, right, that's not the way that you learn the thing? But like, it seems like everybody is stuck in this like theater of like, that's how you learn things and whatever. And it's like, it clearly doesn't work, because it doesn't, like, you just ask any normal adult how much they know about chemistry. And almost every normal adult has taken chemistry and has passed the class, most likely with a pretty decent grade. And they know it, like the self-knowledge that like people don't realize, oh, right, I don't know that thing. And in fact, I learned almost nothing from being in a class for 10 months, having to do homework every night and taking tests and all this other stuff. I still know nothing about it, or essentially nothing about it, right? And on the reverse, right? Like, say I told you, hey, you're gonna get a job, right? Like a month from now, and you need to know basic chemistry, like high school level chemistry, in order to be able to do this job. Like, you would learn it. Like, you would learn it in a few weeks. You'd be like, all right, cool. That's the book. It's like a couple hundred pages. Like, got this, right? Like, no problem. I'm going to figure that out. Why? Because you're a smart, intelligent person. Like, you're somewhat competent, right? Like, you don't even have to be that intelligent, right? If you can like read a book and you're motivated, you're going to learn it. Right. So like, this is what I also tell my wife all the time. She's nervous about, like, oh, well, what if she needs to do this? Then she'll just learn it. Like, it will be like, what, a month of a couple hours a day. She's got it. Right. Like, it's not that hard to learn things. We're really good at learning things when we need to. So if you can teach people how to learn, like how to read, how to go find information that they want to learn about. Like, I ask my kids, like, oh, can you go find a tulip poplar or whatever? Like, okay, how do I even know what a tulip poplar looks like? Yeah, go figure it out. Right. Like, how do I find out that information? Maybe I can ask my mom. Maybe I can look it up in a book. I don't know, right? It's like getting kids to figure out how to get information and how to process it, giving them the time to do it, right? Instead of like, no, you need to give me the thing right now, and if you don't know it, boom, you fail, right? Like, that's also a terrible way of teaching children, but we have to, because of the 40-minute structure, 30-minute quiz, whatever else. And it's like, if you don't know it within 2 seconds, done, you're done, right? And it's basically the cable news of education, right? Like, you need to get your point out real quick. If you don't get it out real quick right now, it's bad, right? They forget like going home and writing, thinking about something, coming up with a great idea, and then bringing it in for a conversation next week where you have a seminar style conversation. Like, that almost never exists, because it's not objective,
You raise an amazing point. So before I get to that, Lainey came up with an awesome comment. She said, I love that. I unschooled my son by traveling around the world for 12 years. We called it world schooling. Dude, Lainey, if you're on Twitter, go to @Matt_Archie and DM me. I would love to have you set up a time for you to come on the show for a future episode and talk about your world schooling, because that is another alternative to the traditional model that's out there. And Lainey used the word unschooling, which also fits into this. So we live in a time unlike any other, where data and information is so ubiquitously available to us on these devices, okay, that the skill set is completely different. Like, we don't necessarily live in a world where, you needed a teacher to come to your one-room schoolhouse because she was like one of only a handful of people on the planet that knew certain information, right? And she was the vessel, or he was the vessel for that information. Now you have limited amounts of data and information. The skill set has completely changed. It's not just knowing things now. It's knowing how to find them, how to break them down, how to reassemble them. It's also knowing how to, and forgive my language, but have a fantastic bullshit filter for facts and data that are bogus. I think that is a completely understated skill set in the current environment. But all of that has changed the environment under which a child can and will be educated into the future. Do you see that affecting the way that you, homeschool or educate your daughter, Mike?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of different things I'm teaching her that she's never going to learn in school, right? Like just that the bullshit detector in and of itself, right? You used the word first, so I decided I could use it. I didn't really know what the rules were on language here today, but now like there's so many different things that she's learning that she's not going to get in a regular school, and we're going to make, and that's just the beauty of it. Right now, next year, I will say this. She did ask me, because she's had the school experience, Daddy, can I go back to school next year? So naturally, I did tell her, fine, and I'm going to put her in one of the local private schools again, because that's what she wanted. I don't want to pull her away from something she does want to do. So if that's what she wants to do, then God bless her, she can do it. I'm not a monster. You know what I mean? And I think for me, that's part of me raising her, right? If she asks me that she wants to go somewhere and expresses an interest in doing it, as long as I can find the environment that I don't think is going to harm her, then I'm more than willing to allow her to have that experience, because that's her. It's now her choice,
yeah.
Right? At that moment, it now have become her choice, and I do think the reason, like she said, well, I miss this person and I miss that person, and I like this so and so, and then my stepmom teaches at the school, and she's like, I want to see, it'd be cool to see grandma. I'm like, all right, those are pretty valid reasons for her wanting to go. And I know with having an inside agent there and my stepmother that it's going to, I get the heads up on any funny businesses coming down the road. Everyone knows I'll pull it right out as if I have to, no matter what. So it's nice to know that I can do it. And having done it, it's like, all right, now there's nothing stopping us, even with the whole camper thing, right? It's like, all right, cool. My wife decides she wants to become a traveling nurse. Awesome, let's do it. I got this. Rock and roll. You know what I mean? School isn't even a thought anymore. Like if we're moving somewhere, school's not a thought. Like I'm not trapped on where I'm moving or where I'm going to live in the world or where I'm going to raise the family, because school isn't trapping me anymore. And then how many people don't move because school? Or how many people choose the place they're going to live because school? How many people allow that one factor to completely dominate and control their lives and restrict their freedom and their liberty personally, right? That's not an anchor for us anymore. And that's been the most beautiful of this whole experience.
Yeah, that's the number one thing I tell people is, like, pay attention to your kid. Like, just pay attention to your kid, right? Like, if you love your kid and you're paying attention to them, you're going to make, like, all the right decisions. Like, like big picture questions, you're going to make the right decision. And you're going to make a lot of bad decisions, but you're never going to let them get too far, right? Because, like, say you tried doing with your daughter, like, say she's in school next year, whatever, right? And, like, you can tell she's coming home, she's not happy, she's not the same person. Hey, what's wrong? You're going to try to talk to her, you're going to try to figure out what's going on. Man, I can't figure out what's going on. My daughter's just not the same. She's not talking to us. She just seems off. You might say, you know what? Maybe I'll pull her back out of school, see if that changes something, right? Maybe she's not happy there. I don't know what's going on, right? You're going to do something, though. You're definitely not like, well, there's something wrong with her. Like, she's a protective kid. That sucks. Like, no, right? Like, there's something else that's wrong, and you're going to try to change her environment to have her thrive, right? And, like, if you pay attention to your kid and you expect your kids to thrive, because that's what people are supposed to do, and you try to look at it from that angle with openness and love and what can I do for this person to help them, instead of what can I do to make this person be the person I want them to be and force them to be happy or force them to smile or force them to do whatever I want them to do. Like, that's the magic, right? Like, you're going to make all the right, send them to school, send them wherever the hell you want, do whatever you want with them, as long as you're paying attention to them and you're paying attention to whether they're thriving and growing and happy and yeah, they're going to be sad sometimes, right? All these things, but, like, generally speaking, are they doing the stuff they're supposed to do, right? It's just like, I don't know anything about trees, but I can look at a tree and be like, that tree doesn't look so healthy, right? Like, like, there's something wrong with that. Like, maybe I'm going to try something different or whatever else. Like, maybe water it more. I don't know. I'm going to do something, right? I'm not just like, well, maybe if I pull the branches harder, it will grow more. Right? Like, that's what people do with kids. They do that, right? They're like, I'm just going to hit him more. I'm just going to force him. I'm just going to make him sit there for longer, whatever. Like, you can't do that, right? You have to be paying attention to what your child is doing. And so many people don't trust their instincts when it comes to their own children. So they say, oh, well, this doesn't feel right. But I'm just going to, yeah, it must be. I'm stupid. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I trust the school, or I'm going to raise it to the. No one's going to bring that up to their teachers, right? It's just like, well, I don't know. I don't know what to do here, right? And they don't know. So, like, trust your instincts when it comes to your kids. Do what you think is in your heart when it comes to your kids. If you think that there's something wrong, do something about it. Take them out of school for a couple weeks. Like, try something different. And you know what? If that doesn't work, try something else. Like, don't give up on your kids. If you don't see them doing as well as they should be, then you have to do something about it. You have to.
And I just want to touch on the one thing. Like, that's the biggest thing is people say, oh, I'm not the expert. They're the experts. No, they're not the experts. They're not. They went to a building that taught them how to regurgitate material out of a book, and they passed a couple of tests, and they got a piece of paper with a stamp on it. You go to work every day. You make how much money? You manage to survive and pay your bills and keep a positive cash flow in your home. You're successful. You feed your family. You're thriving. You're the expert on what it takes to be successful in life. Stop letting other people be the authority in your life when you clearly have proven day in and day out that you are the authority and you can make these decisions.
Well, you're also the expert on your child. Right? Like, no one knows your child better than you do, and maybe whatever else, right? Like, the parents know their kid better than anybody, and I always think that as a teacher, right? Like, if I have a kid that's having a hard time, something's going on, I'll call parent, hey, what's going on? Like, you know your kid better than I do. Tell me what's going on, and I don't know anything about your kid, right? I've known your kid at most for like a few years. Like, you've known them since they were born. Like, you know everything that's happened to them, right? Like, tell me about your kid. And most parents love to talk about their kids, and like teachers need to want to hear about like that insight that parents have about their kids so that I can be a better teacher. Like, I'm going to be a much better teacher if you tell me a lot about your kid and you tell me what they're interested in, what they like, what they don't like. I love when parents tell me like, yeah, you know, my kid really doesn't respond well to like negative criticism, right? Because I tend to get a lot of negative criticism. So I teach all boys, and a lot of them respond to that. You know, like, hey, dude, like, you're just not doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing now. Like, that is not how we act, right? And like, oh, okay, I don't want to be the guy who's not pulling his weight, right? But there's other guys who don't respond to that at all. And sometimes parents will tell me that right off the bat, like, yeah, no, that doesn't work for him. And I'm like, okay, great. Now I'm not going to do that. Perfect. Yeah. Like, I don't need him to respond to everything I'm doing. That's not the measure, right? The measure is how am I responding to him? Right? Like, I'm the one that has the job, right? He's just a kid. Like, we have to change for him, not the other way around, you know, like primarily, like you have to provide the environment for your child to grow, not the other way. The child doesn't have to change for your method of teaching or whatever thing you think is going to work for your ideology of what how kids should best learn.
So on that line of reasoning, Trey actually is asking something that I think a lot of people will ask, right? So Mike talked about how he had to go through kind of a lifestyle change to really kind of commit to this. Some folks have to have dual income and stuff, right? So maybe you do have to keep your kid in some kind of education, whether it be public education or whatnot. So you can always do a variation. Like, you don't necessarily have to just go freaking balls to and pull them out and do everything on your own. I think I would prefer that, but that's me, right? So Trey followed up with just re-educate them often or daily. Look, if you feel stuck in a system, okay, and if you don't feel it's feasible to take them out of school, that's fine. Like, try and at least interject some rational thinking when it comes to certain situations like this. I know you're kind of like fighting the system, so to speak, in that way, but look, I know some parents are like, look, I have no problem with our school system. We have a good school system. I at least take an active role, right? When they come home, try and have that conversation about what happened at school. And then if there is something where it's like, well, Mrs. So-and-so said it just has to be that way, like, interject some rational thought and be like, it really doesn't have to be, right? Like, and let's figure out a way to, like, move forward or find an alternative route or something like that. But I think that's something that a lot of people will come up with. Something else that we talked about, and I don't want to take too much more time because we have our next guest in the green room. Sherry is waiting for us. But the idea of unschooling is this concept where you don't necessarily have to have 45 minutes of math and 40 minutes of English and 35 minutes of this. And it is a method of schooling that allows your kid that you know really well to take whatever they're really interested in and just pick up the ball and run with it, right? So, like, my eldest right now is 11. she's not that great on chemistry or traditional, like, physical sciences. Okay, she's good at kind of like natural sciences because she likes taking walks in the woods and, like, she likes animals and stuff, right? But she's not like amazing on history. What she's really freaking amazing on is reading. And so she's gone to the point where she just reads like a bookworm. And reading is one of the most fantastic things that kids can be really involved in, because it allows them to learn about pretty much everything else, right? So if you have a kid who is an avid reader, she's into dystopian novels right now. It is fantastic to talk about dystopian novels and liberty and anarchy and everything that comes with it. And the message hits home, but she reads on a level that's like 4 years farther than she should be at this point in time. So yeah, she's not up to snuff with the other things, but she's ahead in the areas that allow her to run with the ball. So that's the other thing, is like, I don't think we necessarily have a system that creates all-stars. We have a system that creates a bunch of like average Joes, right? And I think that needs to change, especially when people start talking about, like, oh, we're falling behind China and stuff like that. Well, they just created a better factory. What we need to do is find a better way to find the all-stars and let them run, right? And what a lot of people will find out is, like, I'm using air quotes, so if you're not watching and you're listening, the dumb kid, okay, is an all-star at something, all right? He's just not an all-star at the thing you want him to be an all-star at, all right? And unschooling and taking your kid's education in your own hands allows them to actually do that. So, Mike, you gonna stick around?
Sure.
Stick around. I mean, we're here till 10, so you can duck out anytime you want.
Real quickly, Mike, I just wanted to emphasize that point when you said about, I think, the way you interact with your school, right? I think more than anything, if your kids are in school, they have to know you're going to go to bat for them. If they think that you're going to choose a school over them, like, all the time, and you're never going to go to bat for them, you're just going to tell them do whatever the teacher says, whatever else, like, that, you're done. Like, your kid's going to have no respect for you, and you're not going to be a parent, right? If your kid knows, like, yeah, sometimes I'm going to say your teacher was right and you were disrespectful or you were rude, whatever, yeah, fine. Like, if the kid knows that, like, you will go to bat for them if you feel like they were disrespected, they weren't treated right by a teacher, whatever else, and that doesn't mean calling and yelling at them or something. Like, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to them and let them know I didn't like this. And yeah, maybe nothing's going to change right away. Maybe the teacher's not going to apologize, but at least your kid knows, yeah, I care about you, and I'm going to go say something to your teacher because I didn't think that was right. I didn't appreciate that it was handled with, or whatever else. Like, all your kid needs to do is, like, maybe a couple times in their life that they know, my dad, he's going to go talk to my teacher if there's something weird going on, if he doesn't like what's going on. That's a huge difference,
It's so huge because, how often growing up did you hear you can't fight City Hall? It's not worth the fight. It's not worth the argument.
No, the hell you can't.
The hell you can't. And they need to know that you're willing to, so that as they grow up, they know that it's okay to do so. It's okay to stand up to City Hall. It's okay to stand up to the authority. They need to see that from you. And the one other point, he talked, Trey 50, he asked about, like, re-educate them often. Man, sit down and do their homework with them every night, especially the little ones, right? Like, just sit down and do their homework with them at night. Like, be their friend, help them do their homework. Don't make them do it on their own. Don't make them struggle. Be the buoy that you're expected to be as their parent in getting them through it, right? If you were teaching them how to swim, you wouldn't just let them freaking drown. If you had to, you would hold their hand and help them across the water a little bit until they figured it out. It's okay to tell them, yeah. It's okay, right?
To extend that analogy, even after your kid does know how to swim, you don't just drop them off at the pool and leave, right? You sit there, right? So, I mean, I do that all the time. I sit down at the counter and I read a book, I do some work, and my kids are in the other room reading, or they're doing something else, whatever else. It's like, yeah, if you need something, I'm here. I'm in the area. I'm not watching every little thing you're doing, right? But you're adjacent. You're there. You're next to them. You're involved. They know that you're going to be there to help them out if they need help. Like that, the kids need to know that you love them, and you're going to be they're number one for you. You'll do anything for them. And if they have a problem, they got anything else, you're the number one person to go through. And that's how you solve all these other issues dealing with bad schools, the state, abuse, all these types of things are all solved if the kid knows that they can go talk to mom or dad because you got their back no matter what.
But you also know what they're learning, and you can do that, right? If you're just like, go do your homework and you shoo them off to the other side of the house, you don't know what they're learning, and then you don't know when to go to bat. So, and I know Matt wants to bring in Shelly, so
Sherry's in the green room right now, and she's like, I need to get in on this conversation right now.
Hey guys.
Hello, Sherry.
Sherry, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I've been enjoying hearing what you guys had to say. I just would really, if I could have a minute, if that's okay, to kind of play the Pelosi's advocate on this, right?
The floor is yours.
Yeah. So, I don't necessarily disagree with your points entirely, but I did want to say with public schooling, it's almost better if they were thrown to the wolves, honestly, than to be put into a building and you think that they can come home every day after their hearts and their persons are violated constantly all day and undo all that damage. I don't mean that if you have no other option, then you've got to do what you got to do, right? But I talk to a lot of libertarian parents who give me the same spiel, and it's just not worth their friggin' time, right? That's really what it comes down to, is that they like the babysitting just as much as every other statist parent out there. So that's a huge problem, because as libertarians, I don't know, or an anarchist, I'm trying to build more and complain less. And one of the things you can do to build more is get your kids out of these indoctrination camps. I think that thinking that you can undo what is done to them every day, you might be able to undo some of the things that they're taught. You are not able to undo all of the emotional trauma that they are put through, that the system was designed to put into them every day when they come home. So I saw this with my own son. I experienced it. I'm sure many of you, that whole Prussian system that it's based on is designed to make you fall in line. And this, I totally believe you should stand up for your kids, right? But if you're sending them to a place every day where you have to go in and stand up for them, where people are not on their side, you need to rethink your motives and the fact that they have to live with you coming down there and causing a problem, because that system is set up for people who step in line. So I know you all love your kids. I know everybody wants what's best for their kids. And I agree, there are some schools who are doing a much better job than others as far as their impact on people. But I think it's a real underestimation of the design of that kind of oppressive depression, killing of creativity, of passion. That is a feature, not a bug, right? So we need to encourage libertarian parents, anarchist parents, to get their kids out of these. I don't know about yours. I don't know if you're get your kids out of these fucking schools. They are schools on statism. They're schools intended to make your kids who they want them to be in time. And you're sending them there for at least 8 hours a day or more. Come on, you can't undo that. You don't have the time. They don't have the words to tell you what is being done to them every single day. So I just wanted to say that as an advocate for the complete alternative. I have had my kids out of public school. My daughter's never been. My son went till 4th grade. I would never put them back in. I, as a voluntarist, do not want my kids in those schools. And my son, when he got older, he tried to get back into regular public high school. He felt like he was behind. He tried it. It didn't work. He didn't go. They wouldn't. It's the weird system here. But when he got to college, he's just started. He just graduated, had his senior year, and he did dual enrollment, and he was amazed at how far ahead he was. And that's the thing, like it feels crazy, like you're stepping off a cliff. And like, when you first start, maybe you're ruining your kids. You are not. The metrics you guys were talking about, China built a better factory. That's exactly right. Because the metrics by which they judge are not your children's wellness, are not your children's intelligence. It's their false metric of how much math we taught them and how much they could answer on a test. And we can go into the different things that, stages where math shouldn't even be taught till 5th grade, really. I mean, more than 1 + 1, the very basics, because of abstract ideas and brain development and all that. But I just had to say those things. I was in here like chomping at the bit, because you guys aren't wrong. I mean, I'm not coming in here to like try and be an asshole or whatever and tell you guys you're completely wrong. But I talk to too many libertarian parents who think that they really can just talk to their kids, and they're involved and they love their kids. There's no doubt. But because they're not seeing that impact of the herd mentality and the viciousness with which these friggin' feral based animals that they call children, they're sent to some of these schools, what your kids are having to deal with. And I really want to encourage parents to get their kids out of this. Vote with your feet out of the school system.
I love the fact that you came in like not like quiet and like you kind of like came in through the back door and you're like, excuse me. You were like, boom, like I'm here. I love that.
I'm a Capricorn. What can I say?
Look, I think hopefully I'm speaking for all three of us properly, but I couldn't agree with you more. I think that is
that's the ideal.
Take. I think that is, the ideal scenario, and you're completely right. I think for that hot take, like, comment, subscribe, share. Follow at Sherry Voluntary on Twitter. Is that the best place for people to follow you, Sherry?
Yeah, that or Facebook. Okay. I'm on Instagram, all the alternatives to some of them, anyways.
Yeah. Well, so to that point, I'll open it up to anyone who wants to talk about it. I think that's one of my gripes with anyone who turns around and says, oh, well, the school, like, it came up with masking. Like, masking was the thing that everyone wanted to be like, I don't think my kid should be masked. So I'm going to show up and I'm going to, like, vote really hard with my, I'm going to protest and everything to make sure that my kid doesn't have to wear a mask. And you're like, you're missing the forest from the trees. Like, the muzzle that they want the kid to wear is just one aspect of the various different forms of control and
child
basically
abuse,
like confinement that they're subjecting your child to on a daily basis. And this really kind of goes out to conservatives. Libertarians as well, like right-leaning libertarians. If you're one of these people that's like, oh, well, the school district needs to change or whatever, dude, they're not going to change as long as they keep getting the money. As long as you keep sending your kid there, they don't give a shit. The check keeps clearing, right? The only way that you affect them is by taking the kids out, right? And the same people out of the other side of their mouth will be like, well, the only answer to the problem in the United States is secession. And you're like, well, you won't secede from the public school district, but you'll advocate for an entire state to secede from the union. Go ahead, Mike. You're raising your hands.
Well, no, that's the thing, right? Like, everybody talks such a big game, but nobody actually takes the action, right? And like, that's really one thing. Like, when COVID happened, the one thing I said to myself was, you know what? I'm done talking the talk. I'm going to try and figure out a way to walk the walk in as many aspects of my life as possible, so nobody can sit here and pull that inconsistency card on me. Like, no, my kid's not involved. The state doesn't teach my kid. Okay, I raise my child. I don't hand that off to somebody else. Yeah, I'm living a lot less comfortably than I used to live. Yes, 100%. But I tell you what, my wife was born and raised in the Philippines. She moved here when she was a kid. I've been to the Philippines. I've seen the smiles on those little kids' faces, and I've seen the happy adults that live there as well. I promise you, you live in so much luxury that you don't need, that you could cut back to one job, find a different place to live, and still have the happiest life possible. You don't need to go to Starbucks every morning. You need to raise your child the right way and not allow the state to indoctrinate them to be these little perfect little cutout factory workers that answer the bell and kiss ass to the assumed authorities.
Right. It goes to like how much is your child's mind worth to you? How much is their well-being worth to you? Their health in all aspects, emotional, all of that. And we can't forget that when children are young, the very building blocks of their brain are being built. And that has a huge impact when someone else has your child all day and they're in these systems. I mean, I heard when we first started homeschooling, my ex-husband and I, that I heard people say it'll take as many years as your kid was in public school for them to get to the program of being out of public school. And I thought that's kind of crazy at first. And then I saw it. I really saw it with my son and desire. I mean, he's a very structured person anyway, so we had to use a curriculum that he could see ahead. But where he would just ask permission and he thought things had to be done. I used to argue with him about going outside to play when his friends in the neighborhood were available, because he felt like he had to get everything done before he could go and play. There were just things. And so I think that just that biological and habitual training that they receive constantly every day it's really important that they don't have that in their lives as young people, and that they, what are our jobs, right? We're trying to teach them, those young people, to grow up and be older people, adults who have responsibility, personal responsibility. And you don't do that. You don't teach responsibility by giving people no responsibility. So as close as they can live to what their lives will be like as adults, the better, because they learn how to make decisions and do things on their own. And I just took a shooting class with my daughter, my 10-year-old. I took her to like this basic gun safety thing, and she got to shoot and everything. And one of the things the man mentioned, and I think this is really important, and Michael reminded me of it when he was speaking, is he said people often think they don't need to practice like what they need to do, because so many people are just sure that if something happens, they'll all of a sudden be Superman and know what to do and have superhuman strength, that adrenaline, I'll just do this. And that if you don't practice the proper way, you're setting yourself up to fail. And I think this is that, like, make a few sacrifices, have your own personal responsibility, take the responsibility for your child's education. And mine, I like the self-direct. I like them to be, doing what they're passionate about, but do whatever it is that suits your family. But take that responsibility and recognize that is the bigger house or the bigger car or the vacations, are they as important to you as getting your child set up in life on the right way? I would say that those are your responsibilities, not providing every material thing they want, but providing them with skills and their own wholesome, their own wholeness, and as little trauma as you can get them, to their adulthood.
Yeah, what's funny is you mentioned the shooting class. One of the tweets that's gotten the most mileage from me within the last couple of weeks was, I believe the wording was, in homeschool, field stripping an AK is a class. Which the best response was, I thought the purpose of using an AK was so that you didn't have to clean it.
That's pretty funny.
The homeschool like Twitter sphere is absolutely fantastic. It is a very wide, diverse population of people. But I thought that was really funny. So let me ask you a mechanical question or a logistical question. When you went through that decision-making process to finally pull the trigger on homeschool, right? Did you go the, traditional, let's go get a curriculum, like shop for a curriculum route? Or did you kind of just go cold turkey and like pull the plug and be like, all right, let's see where we can just go with this?
Is that to me?
Yeah, for you. Yep.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. So when we decided to homeschool, initially we tried to make our own curriculum. And like I said, my son, he's very structured thinker, and he needed to know there were things like where he was in progression to the end. So we quit doing that and we started using the Ron Paul curriculum. But I'm really, now I use something else for my daughter, but I'm really, really thankful also. Where I live is very homeschool friendly in Knoxville, Tennessee. There are tons of homeschool people move here to homeschool. There's a lot of business support. There are tons of groups, secular and religious homeschoolers, and lots of co-ops. So there's a lot of options, and those have helped us along the way greatly. I used to go to a support group when I first started because I felt like I was gonna fuck my kids up. Like I was really afraid that I was gonna like ruin them. Even though at that point I was a libertarian for a little while. I had been, and I still, just that I hadn't gotten clear on those issues yet. And it took some help from other people saying it's all right. You'll feel lost, and to get comfortable with that, and then realize when you see the results, you see your kids really blossoming, and my son is very sensitive, and he had a hard time at school. I think he's got some, he's got a mild form of Tourette's and things like this. So it was difficult for him, and he didn't like a lot of the kids for one. And the teachers were kind of, okay. Some of them were better than others, and they're not all bad people, but they certainly don't have your child's best interest at heart, nor do they even have the time to really go into what your kid needs. But that, I guess that's the answer to the question. It was different things along the way. Now, I did unschooling with my daughter when she first was interested in things, and my ex and I don't really agree on that, so we're using a co-op at this point. So 2 days a week she goes to a co-op, and she has a curriculum through that, and it's a really good one, though. They see themselves as partners to us rather than strict. So if I say she's not going to do that, then she wouldn't do that, and we can travel and things like that. So it works out better, and those are parts of the I think when people think homeschooling, they don't know. Like, a lot of people are very ignorant. I was ignorant when I first started about the options available to you, all of the different options. And in some areas they have, different types of little small micro schools and things like that can really benefit your children and aren't public school, but aren't you doing it yourself. If that's not something you think you can do more than you think, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. I want to open that up, Dave and Mike, if you want to chime in. Like, do you think that's a commonality where parents are afraid that they're going to screw their kids up? Like,
Absolutely.
Do you think that's a big mental hurdle?
100%. I think that's the biggest mental hurdle. That's the big conversation me and my wife had. I was less concerned that I would screw her up, but my wife was very concerned that we would screw her up or do something wrong or not be. How am I supposed to teach? I can't teach anybody. I don't know how to teach anybody. And my whole thing was like, listen, everything we've ever done, we've figured out how to do. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, up until she went to school, we taught her how to do everything else. Like, I don't see why we can't teach her this stuff either. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And that was my mentality. Now, I knew it was a big deal. Was I nervous? Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of people got to realize, like, you're more than capable. You really are. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you just are, and you need to just do it and just rip the Band-Aid off. And there are co-ops out there. This is something that comes up a lot, and Sherry Boyce, I'm pretty sure I heard you say the word co-op, but they're out there, and there's people in your town that homeschool their kids and probably take turns during the week teaching different things or going out on different trips and taking all the kids to different places. Like, it's real. You're going to have to take like a month or two and start researching and really start learning how to do it.
Yeah.
Dave,
I know your kids go to school because you're a teacher there, right? But
my oldest son does. So he gets to go to the school for free, and he comes. As I tell the students, because I talk shit about school all the time, they're like, "Why does your kid come here?" I'm like, "My kid is coming to work. He's not coming to school. Like it's natural for a kid to go to work with his dad. That's what I think. So like the way I see it, he's coming to work with me. He's not like, and he goes to school and does the thing, but like." They all, like, my kid knows very clearly, like, there is no expectation that he has to go to school. In fact, there was one time, I think in 5th grade, where, because sometimes it takes a little while to get out of bed, whatever, he's late, I'll yell down and I'm like, Dave, time to get up. And he didn't get up on time. And, I usually like yell at him another time, whatever, but he didn't get up. I went to school without him. And he was so upset with me. But
wow.
He was like, wow, like, you left me behind. Like, and so, like, it doesn't matter how hard the day is going to be or whatever else, like, he has not missed another day because he hasn't got up out of bed. Like, he knows, like, that's what we do, right? Like, the idea, like, men go to work. We go to work in the morning. We do the thing. Like, that's what it is, right? And, like, he wants to be a part of that because he knows that that's, like, the cultural expectation of what you do, right? So, like, he's coming with me and doing the thing that he thinks he's, like, that we're supposed to do. And if he didn't want to come, he knows in a second, I'd be like, all right, Gus, stay home. That's fine. Like, I have no implication that he has to do that. Secondly, to your point, Mike, and to the conversation with your wife, that's the same thing I was referencing earlier, right? Is like, I know especially a lot of women are like really anxious about like, I'm not going to do it right. I'm just going to screw it up. I'm going to do whatever else. And I think like, yeah, it's like that's a mentality. It's like very hard for me to understand at all, because I guess I've seen, like, I went to school and I always just like, are you for real? Like, you guys don't know anything. Like, that was my experience when I was like second grade. Like, I had no respect for these people. Like, you are an incredibly dumb person. You might be a nice person. Like, you're really stupid. And most oftentimes you're not nice. And that was my experience all throughout school. So like, I get it. Like, I'm more intelligent than the average Joe. So like, okay, fine. Right. But like, my wife's really intelligent. And like, she still was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's a nervousness and anxiety there. And like, what I more than anything, what I would like anybody listening to know is like, you there's no way you can be worse off than whatever random person that the state assigned to your kid is. Like, it's just not even possible, right? Like, you could literally do nothing. Like, you could just play games with your kid all day. Like, literally, if you just played like Candyland and Life and Monopoly with your kid, they would be far better off. Like, you could just literally do that for 8 years and they'd be better off. At 100%. Like, I'm not joking at all. Like, they would learn more. They'd be more competent human beings. They'd be awesome. Like, you just go to the park, play games with them, do whatever. They'd be so much better. Like, yeah. I honestly, and yeah, guess what? If you want to try to teach some math or some chemistry or something else interesting, go for it. That's fine. But like, you really don't need to at all. You can do nothing. It's like, stop worrying about like, is he going to learn his times tables on time? Like Sherry was saying before, like there's a lot of reasons you don't have to learn math before a certain age. Like I've taught 8th grade algebra for a long time. And I've told parents all the time, like, oh, what could I do? Whatever else. I'm like, if your kid like kind of knows his times tables, I'm set. Like, I can teach him algebra 1, algebra 2. Like, I can teach him anything you want me to teach him in a really short amount of time. Like, the biggest problem I have as a math teacher is being to be like, no, stop following formalities and just think about the problem, right? Like, use your mind and think about it. Like, does that make any sense? No, it doesn't, right? So don't write that, right? Like, he's like, I don't know how to do it then. It's like, okay, fine. But like, don't just start writing random crap. Like, but most kids do that because like, you have to fill in the thing and you're stupid if you don't write an answer in, right? But like, no, you're stupid if you write the wrong thing. If you say nothing to something that you don't know, that is the smart thing to do. Right. Writing something that you don't not sure about or just is nonsense, that's the stupidest thing you could do. And every single class, almost without doubt, encourages people to write things that they're pretty sure are not right, just so that they can like fill the box in. And like, that's worse than right, guess a choice on the multiple choice test, right? Like, I don't know what that is. I remember I have one kid who was a junior in chemistry who he refused to guess on multiple choice tests. I was like, dude, you got to guess. Like, you're leaving points on the table, right? You didn't know how to do like half the questions. Like, you could have just guessed on them. He's like, yeah, but I didn't know what it was. I'm like, I get that, but like, you should just guess. And he's like, no, like, I didn't know. And I was just like, I got a lot of respect for you. Like, that's
the answer. I'm not going to guess. I
don't know what that is, so I'm not going to write that. Like, I don't actually think that's the right answer. So why would I write that? And I was like, wow, respect. Like, that's
really give you an honest, mirror as to what you need to learn, does it? When you have to fill in every
exactly
blank. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, then you don't know
what that's what everybody's encouraging kids to do from a really young age, right? Just say some nonsense and like maybe you'll get some points from your teacher or whatever. Like, what? Like, your kids don't do that, right? If you ask your kid, like, what, what happened, after dinner? I heard a crash or whatever. Oh, I don't know. Like, maybe the dog did something. No, the dog's outside, right? They don't just say random crap to me, right? Like, talk to me as a human being, right? And like, the school encourages you not to engage as a human being, but to engage with this person as an avatar of a human being, right? Like, that's what this theater, this back and forth, where it parodies real relationship, which is the worst part about it, right? Because like, it'd be better for them to just not have that, right? Than to think that that's what learning is, that's what education is, that's what a teacher is. Like, no, it is none of those things, right? A teacher, a real teacher, someone you've learned a lot from, that's really important to you, a mentor, that's invaluable in life, right? And if you start telling all these kids, like, yeah, that random incompetent person in front of the room, that's a teacher, like, I don't like those people, right? I don't like teachers. I don't like education. I don't like reading. I don't like learning, right? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, the thing that human beings are meant to do is learn, right? Like, people love learning. That's what dopamine does. Dopamine is triggered by learning and being like, wow, that's a cool thing, right? And instead we've destroyed the most beautiful thing about a human being, and like made it into this terrible authoritarian crap thing where your teacher is like telling you whether you learn something or not, rather than having the natural response of having learned it, where you have this false relationship where this person doesn't care about you at best, right? Like, to Sherry's point, like, at best they can't care about every kid in the room the way that you do, right? It's not even possible, right? And And so like at best they just like are neutral on you, right? Like at worst they hate you. They just don't like you. Like they don't like your kid. We all know kids that we don't like that kid's annoying or whatever else, right? Like sometimes our own kids are annoying and it's hard to deal with them. Like you want this person to be patient and kind and loving to your kid for like many, many months, right? For like what, $50,000 a year and some benefits? Like, give me a break. Like, it's never happening. Would you do that? No, probably not. Like, it sucks. It's not something that most people are going to be acclimated towards doing well. So just stop with the nonsense. If you have any interest in doing it, just do it. Literally do it. Stop with all the worry and anxiety. Take them out of school. Ride your bike around town. Leave them inside playing video games all day. It would be far, far better.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you were getting at is what John Taylor Gatto said, that people have networks now, not community. And that the difference is that a community knows the name of its bums. Like we see people as like that was the quote. I love that quote from him. But it's sort of the difference in seeing people. Authoritarianism teaches us to see people by the jobs that they have and to their hierarchy of respect. Oh, I have to respect this person because they're my teacher and not respect this person because they're my trash man or whatever. Not police as much respect, there's politeness or whatever, but a real community is where there is that give and take, where the teacher is not just like in the school system where they're given what they have to teach and they're often told that they have to, teach it, and whoever's getting left behind, they just get left behind, right? The teacher has boundaries that they're set that they have to hit these things by, and then they don't learn how to give the student what the student needs, because not every student needs the same thing. So like when my kids and I are doing something, we don't ever do something they know how to do. I don't bother myself if it's in a workbook or something and they know how to do it. We just flip the pages until they get to something they don't know how to do. Because why would you waste their friggin' time? That's what public school does. It teaches them that their time is not valuable, that their own sense of purpose of what they want to do is not as valuable. And that's so undermining to kids. And I think especially, I did want to say this because one of you guys hit on this, and it reminded me, like, boys are especially impacted by schools, by public schools. And I think that it can't be overstated. It really can't. I think there is, I know we're here about homeschooling, but it's so tied into society and the family. And, there's a breaking down of men in this part of the world that is that's why you see things going the way they're going, because you've got a lot of women with their own sensibilities, and not that, and I'm a woman, I'm glad I'm a woman, but my sensibilities are often different than a man's, and sometimes you just need a man to say, no, this is not, we're fucking gonna do it, this is not right. Or there's a certain way that men can draw a line sometimes that a family needs. They need their friggin' protectors. And it's not to say that families without men can't have that, but it's not something that most women are generally designed to do. So I just think that there's an impact on boys, and those boys become men that we underestimate. And part of that is that they're not, like, boys tend to not be able to sit still as long as young girls. Girls tend to have, these are all generalities. I get it, guys. Don't at me with any of that, stuff. But these are generalities. There are biological tyrannies that we just can't escape sometimes. And I know, as a woman who's very odd and low in agreeableness, unlike most women, I get that there are exceptions, but the rules generally are that boys have a harder time sitting still and paying attention longer than girls do in a classroom setting. And they are punished for that and made to feel bad. So that undermines that beautiful thing that's in a man, that protective, that sometimes need to, I don't say aggressive, but that aggressive, like, protection of the self and of others around me. Like, those are the things that boys need to learn. And like you were saying, your son goes to work with you. That's how boys used to learn to be men, was to be around other men, not be separated from men, and then have these false extended childhoods with all these, like, I'm thankful, like, my children can have an extended childhood to a degree, But it's my job to teach them responsibility. And I've tried to do that. And when they're able to, like my 10-year-old, she does her own laundry. I don't do her laundry. I don't clean my children's rooms, any of that. They are responsible. When they can do things, they get to do them. They can fix meals. They can do things for themselves. And that's an important part of that training up. And education it's like so much when government gets involved, it creates this false scenario, false environment for these things to take place. And then that part of our indoctrination as parents is to recognize that no, bringing them back to the way it should be is not the wrong thing. That's the good thing. And that your kids are weirdos is great. Look, you don't want your kids to be like those kids. Like, honestly, the difference.
Look, the thing right now, what we're doing right now is weird. What we're doing now is weird. Yeah. Almost every person throughout all of human history has not gone to public school. So like, stop with the nonsense that this is normal. This is not normal.
Public school is the experiment.
People always say to me like, how are your kids going to get socialized? And my exact answer is I think most of human history, there hasn't been public school and people seem to have figured out how to advance. So how are your kids going to get socialized?
Pick any hero of anybody, like pick a hero, pick the person you look up to, right? They almost certainly didn't go to public school, right? I mean, I know there's Abraham Lincoln has tons of problems with him, right? But like that's a huge hero in modern culture. He's a perfect example. He never went to public school. He learned on his own. He was one of the best lawyers in Illinois. Like and back then you didn't have to go to law school to pass the bar exam. He studied for the bar exam. He passed the bar exam. He was a really successful lawyer. He was, by all accounts, very skillful at being able to talk to people. Especially, like that's one of the big things everybody talks about him, right? Like his ability to socially be aware and talk to people and things like that. How did he do that? Because he had time of quiet as a child to read, to think about the world around it, right? Like you're not going to be an interesting, sociable person if you don't have thoughts of your own, right? Like if all you're doing is, consuming the modern media and culture and going to school every day and just like one thing after another, being entertained all the time, then yeah, if you're stuck in conversation, you're just going to pull your phone out and start looking at it because you can't have a conversation with people. You're not socialized when you're in school. School teaches you how to go to an authority figure in order to mediate all your relationships, right? Like this happens all the time. I think to your point with boys, like I teach at an all boys school. And this is like, we're like a refuge to so many parents because they're like, yeah, my kid went to the public school or the parochial school, or whatever. And that the people were nice and they were friendly or whatever else, but like they just didn't get it. And I had that experience when I went to a parochial school as a child also. Like the kids will wrestle with each other and they'll throw snowballs at each other and they'll have stick fights and whatever.
It's actually wrong. They're shamed for doing that.
Right. And in almost every school environment, boys are punished for wrestling each other or pulling on each other or whatever else. Like that's how boys learn. It is. And if you watch other species and things like that, like they wrestle like as boys and things like that, little boys want to wrestle each other. And that's how they show each other that they love them. Right? Like you go up and you grab the kid and you fight with them. And I remember going to my friend's house when I was a kid and just like, we're going to wrestle for like 45 minutes. Right. And just like that's how boys learn. That's how we interact with each other. Cause we're not going to be like a girl and write them a little note and be like, I love you, Sally, whatever. Like we don't do that. Right. Like you go up to them and you grab them real hard. Right. And you test them out and that testing, that physical testing is definitely a characteristic that far more characteristic of boys. And like you said, they're punished for that. So if you just like pay attention to like what is actually happening instead of setting down like top down rules, and a lot of women have a hard time understanding what are boys doing right there, right? Because that's not how they grew up. That's not how they would interact with another girl, right? When they were 7 years old, they wouldn't go up to another girl and start pulling her hair or something. Like that would be a way of showing that you don't like them, right? So like they don't understand what's going on when a boy goes up to another boy and just kind of like grabs him real hard or pulls on him or whatever. And so like, oh, don't do that. Like, and on top of that, there's like a co-ed thing going on. So like if a boy goes and pulls on a girl and vice versa, like, okay, that's a different thing and it makes it complicated, right? So it's easier just like, no touching, no pulling on each other, no wrestling, no sticks, no snowballs, no nothing, right? Like
no fun.
We're just going to like have the fun game where we all go around and say something interesting and we'll play duck, duck, goose and tag or whatever. I mean, I remember even in recess as a kid, like I never got to do recess because like I was bad in class that day or whatever. Or when I did do recess, like I did something that was wrong. I didn't even know what it was. And they're like, no, go stand over there. I'm like, oh, I guess so. Sure. Like, I don't know what I did. But I definitely see that other side of it being at the school I'm at as an all-boys school where it has an all-male faculty. And it's very much like the parents are like, wow, finally, my son can go to a place and he can just be himself and other people get him and understand what's going on. And it's So yeah, I think that's a point that a lot of people are afraid to make these days.
Yeah.
Especially
So
because
I'm
because of
gonna
all
jump in. I'm gonna jump in really quick. So I3 UTM is watching on Odyssey, and I forgot to check the Odyssey feed. So he's got a couple of based comments that are on there. One of which is you have to chat to the America First crowd, who's more into public schooling than they like to admit. They completely are refusing to acknowledge that homeschooling and having a partner at home to teach the kids is the most liberty thing you can do. So that's right in line with what we've been talking about. And also, we talked about the Prussian model that this is based off of. I think a lot of folks, especially the people that are on the conservative right, regardless of what their party affiliation is, forget that this is basically a proto-socialist or communist type structure to our education system. And so they want to reform a socialist / communist structuring to our education system. So it's kind of like, like a little cognitive dissonance that's going on there. And then the last one is Lucas is trolling a little on Facebook, but you know what? Lucas, when you troll on my program, we turn it into a conversation piece. So have you, so what is the conversation about? Homeschooling? Have you met homeschooled kids? I have. My kids are freaking awesome, dude. They come out with observations on life that normie kids are just like, right? Like it's like, it is completely different. When my kids like creatively play, it is outside of the box and it is freaking beautiful. It is amazing. So
it's funny. My daughter is talking about all the businesses she wants to start as a kid, while all her normie school friends, they're all talking about the latest thing they saw on YouTube or Roblox or something. So yeah, my kid's gonna be really messed up. She's gonna have a terrible life. I mean, she's like an all-star at hockey at like the age of 8. Like she plays soccer. See, you can socialize your kids and they can still be normal kids because the rest of the world exists outside of school. I don't know if you know this, Lucas. Like you can still be normal and go to like a hockey and play hockey or football or baseball and still hang out and still go to the kids' houses after school and they can still have play dates with all the same kids and they can still go play with all and still have all the same friends. It's weird how that works. It's almost as if
I gotta be honest. The weirdest thing your daughter does is play hockey.
It's pretty badass, bro. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, we have to remember they're being taught to be consumers, not creators. That's really what's being taught in most schools: how to consume authority, how to consume. One of the biggest ones, and one of the biggest reasons and pieces of propaganda that they've pushed is that teachers are heroes. They're not just people doing a job; they're heroes. Just like cops are heroes. So that's intentional, because then you can't be honest about them, can't talk about how, be critical in any sort of way. And that's why the right, they love that, that structure, that hierarchy. And they really want to, go and thank our heroes. Everybody that the state, ever notice how all the heroes they have are people who are state agents? That's the thing. There's not like a hero that, the mom or the dad that's actually taking the time to do, their education of their parents, or to start a business, or to, undermine the state in some way. Those people aren't heroes. And these are the freedom lovers, right? So I think we have to remember, if you can't get them to even want to get rid of the pledge that they know was made by a communist, like they're definitely not going for like it's the ratchet effect. This is like the left moves the narrative to the left and the right prevents it from moving back right. And that is exactly what we've had with the right. That's why we're where we're at, where they're talking about instead of, how to end the public education system, they're talking about, vouchers and this. And I get it. There are some better alternatives that if we could even they could even just get some of those in, like Corey DeAngelis. I love that guy. I think he's got a lot of great stuff going on. But my ultimate goal is, hell yeah, let's get rid of public schools. Like one-room schoolhouses are far superior. I can't tell. I like the results of kids that have the opportunity to have, I think one of the commenters mentioned it, mixed age friendships. My son has benefited so much from the mixed age friendship. community is mostly older people. And he's gone and met all of the neighbors, and he does little things for them, takes in their trash, just has conversations with them. I can't tell you how many times my people have talked to me about how awesome like one of my kids is, and they don't even know they're homeschooled, and they're just so amazed at who they are. And then I'm like, yeah, and they find out we homeschool, and they're like, really? They're just not weird. And they can have a conversation with adults and with kids and those kinds of things because they've had that experience. So, and I look, I will say my kids are a little weird. They're into their own weird things, but so are lots of kids. And I couldn't be prouder that they're weird. I don't want my kids being like these little,
robots,
these bullies
robots?
Robots that go to these public schools. Like I went to public school. I had very traumatic public school experiences, and I just don't want my kids to have that. I don't think that it's going to solve or do the things it's your job to make sure that they're able. Like I want my kids, I want them to be weird enough to question everything. Like I want them to be anarchists. I want them to be very skeptical, but like kind of mainstream enough to get along with the normies. And that makes their lives easy, and it's pleasant because you have to deal with people. So I think you can do both. I have known some really weird homeschool kids, though, that their parents are maybe more isolating than, but that's by far the minority as my experience goes.
Well, the problem is that that's completely because the state has forced them to be weird, right? Like, I mean, especially now we have the internet, we have so many more resources, we have like ability, like Mike was saying, for like there's someone in your town that might be not sending their kids to school as well. Like now you can find them, right? Like you can go online and figure them out. Like 20 years ago, good luck, right? Like 30 years ago, good luck, right? So like we're kind of still dealing with this institutional problem where, yeah, a lot of people that homeschool their kids were probably pretty weird. Like most of us are pretty weird, right? Like this is not what most people do on a whatever night it is, Monday night, right? Like talk about anarchy and whatever. Like this is a little strange, right? Like we're not, that's fine, right? But I'm just saying, like the type of people that are going to like be the ones who are going to go and homeschool their kids because like they really care and they're passionate about that. Like, yeah, that is odd. Most people are not that passionate. They're like, yeah, whatever. My kid's getting abused in school and his teachers are kind of assholes to him and they don't care about him. But like, what are you going to do? Like, that sucks. It's like, no, I would never do that. Right? Like, none of us would let our kids do that, right? We're going to do something about it. We're going to stop that right away. And that is weird. That a lot of people aren't going to do that. And you know what? That's what we need, right? Like society needs leaders. They need people that, and not in every, I'm not a leader in every field, right? Like I'm a leader in this field, right? We all are leaders in this field in the way that we have been, we're the avant-garde of people that are doing these things before it has become mainstream for most people nowadays. And that's fine, right? Like other people are better at other things than I am. There's writers and all those other, right? That they do that thing better than I do. That's great. We can all learn from each other and say like, oh, you're weird. You write for a profession. That's not a normal job. What a weirdo. Or like, oh, you're a professional athlete. What a weirdo. That's not normal. Like, yeah, it is not normal, but that is an excellent thing, right? Like be excellent, right? Like be great at something. So you don't have to do a normal job. As I told all my students, like a degree gains more value the more incompetent you are, right? Like if you're really competent, you don't need a degree, right? Like you could just go into the marketplace. Like I know that if I didn't have a degree, I would be fine because I could start my own SAT prep course or math course or whatever else, like in a little place. And I just have so much faith in my teaching ability that I know I would make enough money to be fine. Right. And forget teaching. Like I could do a lot of different things. I'm a competent person, right? Like if you're a competent person, you don't need that. The less competent you are, the more you need a piece of paper that says that you're competent. Right? Because think about what that says, right? Like that's what a degree is. It's saying a degree of competency because it's not obvious that you are, right? Like so giving your kids that sense of method. Yeah, like giving a natural sense of competency. Like, are you good at this? Right? Like the worst thing that I drives me nuts. I'll say, kid, how'd you do on that test or something? You're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, how could you not know? If I put a puzzle together, I know at the end whether I did it right. I don't have to ask my wife, like, hey, did I put this jigsaw puzzle together correctly? Like, I can look at it and be like, oh, right, yeah, I did it, right? Like, did you fix my car, mechanic? Like, let me check. I'm going to drive the car. Oh, yeah, it seems like it's fixed, right? Like, yeah, there's some, like, edge cases where it's not obvious, and I get that, right? Like you're learning a language that I compose a sentence the right way, or sure, okay, whatever, right? But ultimately, the test would be, can you speak to people in Spanish? Like, can you speak to a Spanish speaker? Okay, fine, you know Spanish. Can you not? Okay, you don't know Spanish, right? Like, I don't care what else you know, right? Ultimately, all these things need to be tested by natural consequences. And what school does is removes those natural consequences by sheltering them from stopping them from engaging in those things. And in fact, school takes so much of kids' time that they takes away from all the other opportunities they would have. For instance, my kids this evening, I normally go with them to a Magic tournament. Magic the Gathering is a card game, and we usually go on Monday nights. But of course, I need to be here. So my wife dropped them off at the tournament, and it's the two of them together. So 14 and 12-year-old kids. Most parents are not going to let their kids just go to some random Magic tournament at a shop. But we go every Monday, and they go there. And I'm like, David, you got to make sure you keep an eye out for your sister. No one steals your cards. Like, don't get ripped off on some type of trade, right? Like, now, is there a chance that he trades like an expensive card for some other thing, or someone steals his cards, or something happens? Yeah, there is. Like, that's the opposite of sheltering them, right? Giving them that opportunity to go there. And I know the people that work there well enough, and they've been there enough times that I trust that it's a good decision. If someone else doesn't think their kids are competent for that, okay, fine. But like, you need to find opportunities for your kids to exercise their freedom. And you can't do that when they're at school all day long, and then everything else in their life is scheduled. Like, I know a lot of parents where they send their kids to public school, and then after school, they have activities that they send to. On Tuesday, we do this, and on Wednesdays, we do this, and on Thursdays, we do that. And then you have to play it on Saturday. And there's no freedom to just go do things. Like, yeah, go walk to the store. Go ride your bike around town. Like, see you later. Come back. I'll see you in a little bit. Like, go for a walk in the woods. Like, there's this anxiety that we all have. And I think even if like you get used to it, you still have this like background anxiety if like, oh, my kids went out for a walk in the woods. And you're like, oh, like, I really hope that a snake didn't come and then he fell and now he's hurt. And we're like, that's a natural feeling we have to have. And like, we have to have a culture and a community that's like, no, it's okay. Push your kids out there. We're like, get them to go do it. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Because we're always going to be concerned about our kids' safety. But like, we need to normalize having kids just walk around the street, go and do things. Like, go mow your neighbor's lawn, go find something to do, right? Go start a business, whatever your things are. Like, go to a store, go to the bookstore and walk around by yourself. Go to the mall and walk around by yourself. Like, I remember I used to do that when I was a kid with my friends. We used to walk around the mall. Like, why was that popular? Because like, there's a set place, you can't get in too much trouble, but you have freedom. You can walk to different places, you get a little bit of trouble. Like, and so that ability to give your kids that type of exercise of freedom is, I feel like, really gone these days. There's very limited ways for parents to give their kids opportunities to exercise their freedom in a way that is safe.
That's really part of the indoctrination of just regular people, though, too. Like, kidnappings by strangers have gone down dramatically since the 70s. It's gotten lower and lower and lower, and yet people are more and more and more afraid to let their kids play in the front yard at their own house. And you hear people calling the police on people who let their kids walk to the park by themselves or whatever. So I think that's really part of that. And I think a lot of it does have to do with the pressure on mothers to be worried. Like, I've sat in groups of women so many times that the one that's worried the most is the one who cares the most. That's really the way the conversations tend to go, is that, well, I just want this and I just want that. And all your wants then make up what your kids should be doing. And they do. They'll schedule them for this and that and this because they feel like they have to be in everything that they want to do or everything the parents want them to do. And they're not taught that their internal drives and what they want to do are good things. So like, we have you on the swim team because, you're going to be a great swimmer and you're going to do this, or we're doing this for you. And really there's not that drive for the kid. Like, part of something I've learned is like the difference between drive and desire. There's a lot of people that have desire. Like, we all desire for things. Kids have tons of desires for many, many things. They don't have drive. Desire is when you want a pony. I want a pony because you think it's going to be fun. Drive is when you get on your bike and you ride to the stable every day and you brush, you take care of the stalls so that you can pay for having, your own pony in there. Like, that's drive. And that's the difference. And people don't let their kids have enough independence to develop drive. And then they don't encourage those things because they're afraid. Because they feel afraid that, something bad could happen. Well, fuck yeah, something bad can happen. A meteor could hit the earth right now and we could all die. There's a million different things that can happen. Don't let your kids not live, though, because you're afraid of something bad happening to them. within reason. Of course, nobody is suggesting you should see sharks in the water and throw your kids out there. But by God, let your kid ride around the neighborhood. Most of us live in pretty safe neighborhood. Like if you don't, that's one thing. But if your kids, if they live in a safe neighborhood where they're not going to get shot or murdered or something, let them experience life. Let them navigate some things, because that's how you really build self-esteem. I mean, you want to talk about, there's, a lot of people are so convinced that self-esteem is the thing that kids need, but the way they go about it is the exact opposite of giving them that. So that's why you have 30-year-olds who don't know how to do anything but play video games in their parents' basements all day, because they've never been allowed to fail at anything. They're like this idea that, well, I'm going to give them self-esteem, so I'm going to put them in gymnastics, I'm going to put them in singing lessons or music lessons, and I'm going to do this and that. And they have all these things that they think are going to make them have self-esteem. But what they don't realize is that they're constant helicoptering and constant, I know so many, my friend runs a music school, and so many of those parents are constantly on the kids. Well, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to practice, you got to do, and it's like, yeah, if they want to be good musicians, they need to practice. Or you're not hitting the right, notes right, or you need to do this and play this for yours. Like there's a constant undermining that helicopter parenting does to children that tells them they're never good enough. So that's why they're never good enough. With all the opportunities that they're given, they're not good enough. And that's a big, I think that's one of the bigger issues of the mistakes that a lot of parents make, especially now, because people are so affluent. Like, I don't mean affluence as in you've got a mansion, but we have a lot more than anybody else before us. And we have a lot more free time than anyone else before us. And we choose to spend it in ways often that don't actually help our kids get further. Like learning how to be in silence. And that was one of the things you said earlier that it's so for myself, even I've been like practicing more silence, because if I just consuming all day, then I'm not like actually having my own thoughts and my sorting out my own emotions. But I think a lot of people do that so they don't have to, right? Because it's uncomfortable to face yourself in the mirror sometimes. So, or just to be alone with your thoughts. That's scary for people. But it's because we're in this consumer culture of consuming media constantly and being entertained constantly, rather than sitting sometimes just with a little silence and getting our thoughts in order.
I forget who it was, but someone actually, I forget if they wrote a book. It was basically like the art of being bored, or like, the value of being bored, right?
That's
and
cool.
like like a lot of parents will see their kid, and the kid will just be like hanging out doing nothing, and you're like, well, what are you up to? And the kid's like, I'm bored. And the parent will try and invent something for the child to go do, which is a natural response, because you're trying to fulfill your kid's needs, and you're perceiving that the kid needs something to occupy their time, when truthfully some really great innovations came out of people being bored, right? Specifically children being bored. And so that's also something where, I mean, we've been talking about it in aggregate, where it's like, everything's scheduled out and there always has to be something, and you need to give them a broad education where they touch on all of these different things. And it's like, no, they really don't. Like they really don't. Like they will find a way to be extremely curious. I mean, you see it with these like outdoor schools and like Scandinavian stuff, like I forget what they call it, like the danger schools or whatever.
Yeah.
Where they allowed the kids to play with like fire and like saws and things. And there's like a 6-year-old like hammering, and the other kid's like holding the piece of wood, and you're cringing the whole time because like you're worried that like the one kid's gonna get brained with the hammer. But like kids who are bored, they find something to do. Boys sometimes find something destructive or annoying to do, but you have to kind of direct that and bridle it a little bit. But parents should not be afraid of their kids being bored, and they shouldn't also, helicopter every moment of their life. Like, let them explore the world with some level of autonomy, without having to kind of be led everywhere.
But just thinking about the danger school, that's what builds real confidence and competence in them. Because like my daughter, she's 10, she does her own laundry. She knows she can do her own friggin' laundry. She doesn't have to wait on me. She's like, that's a point of self-respect and self, knowledge that hey, I can do things. I don't need to wait on mom to do these things for me. And then it makes her actually try to do other things for herself, because all kids want to grow up. That's the purpose of being a young person, is to get to be an older person who gets to be an older person. Like, you just build on those skills. And it's so it's invigorating for kids to know that they can be competent in things, and it encourages them to more competence. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I all the good stuff. Look, you can hang around as long as you want, Sherry. So, any of the guests can come on for their time slot and then chill out for more conversation. So you're more than happy to hang out. We have our next guest in the green room, so I'm gonna bring him on. If you want to chill out, Sherry, that's cool. Brandon, welcome to the Thunderdome.
Hey.
The hair looks good. Thank you for doing it up for the spot. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad you could join us. I'm pretty sure you caught some of the conversation. You are a homeschool dad.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Random homeschool dad.
What was that?
I'm the random homeschool dad. That's what I feel like I'm on this show.
Yeah.
I'm the only woman here.
Which is ironic. It's like it's a lot of people think that it's mostly women, homemakers and stuff like that end up being the homeschool person in the family, and maybe the statistics show out that happens more often than not. But what's it like being on the dad side, Brandon?
I guess I feel like what it's like to be a mom.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's any different. I wouldn't say from when I've met homeschool moms. I mean, they're all out doing the same thing as I am. I don't know what differences there would be to be a homeschool dad. It is. It's funny though, when I'm in a whole bunch of different homeschooling Facebook groups and stuff, and they're always going, "Where's my mom's at? I need some answers from my moms." And I'm like, "Hey, what about the dads? We're always getting left behind."
Right? Yeah, right.
It's a little sexist. I'm hurt. I get hurt every day.
Very offended.
Well, so just give us a little bit of your backstory. You have kids that are homeschooled. Why, how, what was the lead up?
Well, yeah. So he's going to be 8 next month. Nolan, my son. So he's my main pupil right now. And then I have a 3-year-old daughter who, of course, is with us all the time and learning things. I have some stuff I'll work with her, but it's just more activity books and things like that. But we got started. Everybody always asks if it was because of COVID that we started homeschooling, and I had already kind of started thinking about it before that, because he was born a week before the cutoff of age in public school to go up a grade. And he's always played with older kids. All his cousins are older. He just seemed to thrive with older kids. And he went through preschool, and all the kids were a lot smaller than him in his class. So I went to the public school. I said, instead of going to kindergarten, can he just go straight to first grade? Can I test him? He knows all the stuff that he's going to learn in kindergarten. Can he just take a test and prove that and go to first grade? And they were adamant, no, there's no test. He just has to go there because of his birthday. And I was like, well, he's going to get bored. He's not going to be challenged enough to grow mentally, and he's just going to get bored and sit there and not enjoy it, which that's pretty much what exactly happened through kindergarten. And then at the end of kindergarten, COVID happened and everything went virtual anyway. So I was like, all right, I'm just going to graduate him from kindergarten. I went and got a curriculum and did that. And then the schools all calling me going, why hasn't he done all his virtual stuff? And I'm like, oh, I graduated him. And they said, no, it doesn't work like that. We need to have you sign off on this virtual stuff. So we had to go back and actually finish kindergarten through the school too. But it gave us a good start of what we were going to be in for, and figured out that it was doable with our schedules and everything. And so we went into his first grade and full on homeschooled, withdrew him from the school and everything. And that's how we got started in that.
Awesome. What curriculum did you go with?
What's that?
Did you have a specific curriculum you went with, or did you kind of piece one together?
Different curriculums. We did, it's called Blossom and Root for science, and we used their language arts. I was always interested in Montessori schools when we were looking into schooling and everything like that. So when I went and started looking for homeschooling, I'm like, I wonder if there's any homeschool Montessori style curriculum. So I found this Blossom and Root that it's all, I really like the hands-on stuff, like the nature, the science. It's all, we did so many nature walks through the year, and we did all about plants. It was a year of plants, and it kept them entertained. We were constantly going out finding different types of plants, learning how they grow, what goes into, everything. And now we're combining earth, like the beginnings of the earth and rocks and all that stuff with animals. So I'm alternating this year between the two units because I felt like we kind of got burnt out on plants a little bit. So I'm trying to do two different curriculums at once, just bouncing back and forth to keep them a little bit more interested.
Yeah.
So that's the science and language arts. I think I'm going to put together my language arts this year. I'm a big reader and kind of know his interests and everything. So we'll kind of go with the flow on that. And then history it's called the Story of the World. Story of the World, right? Yeah. And it's kind of, I use it as the backbone and then build on it with movies and video games and things that kind of tie into it. I'm a big game schooler, but it's good to have that backbone of, okay, this is what we're going to do. Now let's figure out how we want to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that you mentioned the game. So, again, this is one of those things where it's really dependent on a parent knowing their kid, right? So I would love to open this up to the whole crowd too. My son, just real life example, he is I would use the phrase electronics addiction. He will become visibly shaken when you try and put some kind of time limit on electronics use. And so the concern there is that he's going to basically binge on the stuff, right? Some kids both of my daughters, maybe it's a boy-girl thing, or maybe it's just their individual constitutions, but when, either one of them, it's all right, time's up, we got to go do something else. They're like, okay, cool, shut it down, and they move on to the next thing. Him, it's one more minute, was that a concern for you, Brandon, or any of the other of you? Was that a concern in terms of using electronics? Because a lot of people will be like, well, if they don't learn to use the iPad, they're going to be left behind because it's a technological world. And you're like, yeah, well, my kid has some issues with it. So I got to balance it. Was that something where it was tough to structure, or has it been fairly, even?
No, and I think it's because he has the freedom to do it. He knows, and I've actually found the value in different things that he enjoys. Fortnite. For the longest time, I was thinking, we can't count Fortnite. It's Fortnite. And then I sat down and played with him. We've been winning some duos lately. It's been pretty nice. But I start playing with him, and I'm seeing his communication skills are being tested. He's leading these teams to victory, so he's getting his leadership skills. He's doing all this crazy building that I can't even do. So his hand-eye coordination, his just mental capacity of how he's setting up his loadout of his weapons. He's telling me, Dad, you got to put your weapons different. You can't have that loadout. You're not going to be able to change your weapons quick enough. So I was like, oh my goodness. He's getting so much growth from this silly game that I thought there was just kind of just mindless, brainless stuff. That I was like, all right, this is critical thinking right here. We can use this for our non-core time at least. So I think because I don't say, he knows we're going to do all the other stuff too. So it's, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but.
Yeah, no, it definitely addressed it.
Because I find the value in the things that he's enjoying that most of the time parents will be like, oh, you're wasting your time. I think it kind of helps him feel obligated. I think he enjoys everything I try to put together for him for the most part, but he knows that after we go out and do a nature walk, or God forbid we have to do math, which I try to make fun, but he's good at it, but he gets very frustrated. But he knows that he's going to get his video game time, and so he can get away from it fairly easy. If I answered that question very long-windedly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Let me go around the circle, because I think this is something that every parent, regardless of whether they, educate through the traditional public education system or homeschool or unschool or anything like that, I think most parents war with this. So as far as the educational component of it, Sherry, how have you viewed the electronics part of it?
I think it's an amazing help. You know, it really is a great aid to finding things that are great for your kids. One of the things we found an online curriculum when we first started called Easy Peasy. It's completely free. It had great stuff going on in it. So we used that until we found what we really wanted. And as far as games go, my daughter, my daughter is really super into anime. She's what you call a weeb. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. She's a total weeb, and she is she's on these sites that you make skins for. She's a brilliant artist. My daughter is very, very talented. She develops her skills all the time. She is a very good artist, but she makes these little, like Minecraft skins and things like that, or little that she's on these sites where she gets, rated amongst, the other skins, and people can use them. And, sometimes she'll have like 80 people, 100 people using her little Minecraft skin, which to her is really great. And she gets that feeling of producing something that people want and can use. So that I love that. She also taught herself to read using Minecraft. Because I tried to teach her to read, because for me, reading is the most important thing. I don't care about all the geometric stuff. If my children can learn to read well, then they learn to speak well, they learn to write well. Reading is such a great development for the brain. That's really the basis of everything. If they can read well, they can teach themselves anything. So I was trying to teach her to read, and she was about 4 or 5. I can't remember. She was interested in reading books, but she did not want me to teach her to read. She just would not have it. And so finally I was like, I give up. I'm just going to wait, because it was just too much friction. Well, then she was playing Minecraft, and in Minecraft, I didn't realize so much of it is text. And so she couldn't keep up with the other kids. So she taught herself to read. And then they were like, you spell like a baby. So, she couldn't have that. So she taught herself to spell. She's a really good speller now. So the things that she was interested in online, she's taught herself. She knows how to use the GIMP. She knows how to use Inkscape, I think it is, or something else. Like she could probably start doing with graphic design. Because she learned these things because she was interested in it. She wanted to make a meme about one of her, anime creations or whatever, or the things she's into. So I think you just have to, like you were saying, as a parent, you have to look at these things differently and look for the value that they're getting out of it. And what are the things that I want them to be learning that maybe they're learning in this, and entrepreneurship, and the fact that you wanted to do something, so you went and found something to do it, or she'll ask her dad a lot of times, because he's a big tech guy, what she can use to do this or that, and he'll get her the program. She'll teach herself. So those are brilliant things that skills that she will build on and have forever, that have definitely come through technology. Khan Academy is another one that we've used, or other video type based programs, because then that way I'm a big proponent of kids being able to work at their own pace. And my son never needed help in anything scientific. I mean, he's wanted to be a mycologist since he was 6 years old. That's what he's going into. That's his thing. He loves it. So he's based a lot of things around that, or building, outside of technology, building aquariums and tanks and things. But he was able to go and learn those things online that, he didn't have to wait for me to be able to take him to the library or whatever. He could learn what he needed to learn, and we could figure it out. So I think technology is a huge game changer in education. And I don't see any problems other than maybe a little too much time. But I think what you were saying, when they have more access, it becomes less scarce, right? Scarce resources, and people that hold on to that. And like my daughter, sometimes she's had an issue, but she's 10. So we'll talk to her. Like I'll say, she'll be upset that she's like, I didn't get this done today, and I really needed to get it done. And I'm like, well, it's a matter of time management. What did you do that you should have cut out? And usually it's been on the computer and stuff. So we talk about it, and she starts to self-govern better in that area. So I think that's fine.
Natural consequences. I love that feedback loop. What about you, Rufo? Have you found electronics to be a good thing, bad thing, something in the middle?
It's more of the same of what they were saying. It is kind of somewhere in the middle, right? It has its pitfalls, but I mean, it's a huge crutch that like we didn't have growing up. Like think of the access to information. Like she's learned how to look things up on the internet. You know, obviously I keep a very watchful eye on what she's looking up when she's on the internet. But still, nonetheless, like it's been an amazing tool, and it's only what you make of it, right? And again, scarcity, right? Like I have zero issue with her when I turn around and go, all right, listen, put down. We gotta go do something else. It's like, okay, sometimes I get the 5 minute, hold on, let me finish this thing. And, you know, listen, if she's in the middle of like if she's playing a game or something and there's a goal and she's close to accomplishing the goal, all right, finish your goal and then we'll go on. And cause I still want her to get that satisfaction of completing a task, right? Like task completion is a very big thing for me. Like I really believe in task orientation and task completion, right? Like I know it's more traditional. It's kind of the opposite of a lot of what we've been talking about. But still, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you have to be task oriented, right? Like you have to know, like I have these goals, they need to be accomplished, and I want to accomplish them. So I think the video games that's really been the biggest thing. Like she wants to build something, she builds her little world or whatever she's doing with the designs, and my daughter, she plays these games where she designs like these outfits for these characters. I have no idea what the name of the game is, but she's always designing outfits. And she's like, look, Daddy, isn't this a cute outfit? And then sometimes like, oh, that's a really nice outfit. Daddy, I'm worried about the dog in this one. Oh, okay, sure, whatever. But she has but she comes up with a plan, she executes the plan, and then she feels the satisfaction of completing the plan. And for me, that's the most beautiful thing that those things provide.
Yeah. What about you, Dave? I always envision your kids like, you know, doing work with like pen and paper. I would think you would appreciate like the physical feedback of like actually writing on paper when not many people do that nowadays. Is that true, or do your kids use electronics?
I would say that's definitely true. I would say even more like than pen and paper is memory, right? Like being able to speak, like you use your voice, as Sherry was saying earlier, right? Like if you can read, that's great, but if you can speak, right? Like if you can memorize something, it's with you forever, right? No one can take that from you. I mean, I love that part, Brave New World, right? Sorry, Fahrenheit 451, right? At the end when like they put back their books again because people remembered them, right? Like traditional education, right? There's nothing traditional about public schools, first off. So the whole traditional public schools, that's not a thing, right? But traditionally education, classical education, and this is another thing I always laugh at, like classical curriculum, like classical education used to be memorizing Virgil. Like kids would go to the school and the grammarian would like have a stick and be like, okay, you have to memorize the next 100 lines of Virgil, and then like if you don't, I'm going to beat you because you're being lazy. And then you have to read them to me, and if you don't know them, you didn't try hard enough or whatever, right? But like you had a guy a slave who would bring
Full
you.
disclosure, we're not advocating beating children. Just.
I'm saying like that, but that's what classical education was. So all these people are like, I'm doing classical education. Okay, so you mean that you're getting Virgil out and you're literally having to memorize thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of Latin poetry, more than almost anybody can imagine. Like the ability of the ancients to memorize was far just like formal memorization was far vaster than anybody can imagine. Like people would go to listen to a speech and then be able to give it verbatim back what they just heard, like a 30-minute lecture, and just like be like, yeah, this is what it was. So like that was classical education first off. So I try to include a lot of memorization. I think memory is a really important thing. You learn a lot about structure. You learn about imitation, how to speak well by being able to memorize something. You really pay attention to exactly the order. Oh, I see what he did there with that poem. He put that word there, and I'm going to remember it because of that. Right? You learn structure that way, and it forces you to slow down. Right? You can't just like consume and throw it away. Like I hate the idea of finishing up. Like I'm going to get through 100 books and like okay, great. Like if you read a book every week, that would be like a pretty good pace. That's still 50 books times like how many years do you have to live? Like you're not even like one bookshelf. Like you can't get through that many books. Like stop trying to have the mentality like I'm just going to consume a lot. Like consume like make it change you. Right? Like make it a time of meditation. You can think about it. It can be part of you. And like remember the good things, like write them down and try to bring them to your memory so you can recall them later when you have a conversation. And you can say, oh yeah, I read that book and here was a few really important parts that really spoke to me. And these are the important things. Like remember it, make sure it stays with you instead of just like getting through the book and checking it off your list and being like, oh, I finished Huckleberry Finn, but I didn't learn the central message of it, which of course was that public school is evil. The irony is that it's taught in public schools. So getting
well, I don't think so because of some of the word choice in there
Right,
anymore.
yeah, no,
I don't think
I'm
it is
not.
anymore.
They took it
Yeah.
out of the curriculum.
So to answer your question though, like yes, so I definitely do promote like non like formal learning in the sense of like memorization, like being able to recall what a tree looks like, to draw it, to like practice the memory, right? So like this is what used to be called music, right? Coming from the muses, right? Like anything that dealt with that, right? So singing, playing the piano, like coming up with a song, like Michael was saying, like designing something and being creative and playing around with ideas, dancing, right? Like that's the whole beauty of The Sound of Music, the movie, right? Like to bring back the muses to the family. I think that is the cure, right? Like we need people to be able to tell stories to one another. Like my son loves telling stories. And he'll actually like record stories and write stories, and then like the other kids will listen to them and read them when he's not there, because like the ability just to tell stories around. Like how many people can do that? I suck at it. I never did it as a kid. Like, but he's great at it because he has nothing else to do. So like, of course, I'm going to tell my other kids, my kids, my brother and siblings stories, and he's really good at it. He does drama in school, and he loves it. He has a real passion for it. So like being able to create, right? Like being able to and it doesn't have to be excellent. It just has to be like fun and interesting and like enjoy it. Like just play. Like you're going to fail. You're going to tell a bad story a bunch of times before you tell a good one. You're going to tell bad jokes, and that's fine. Like eventually you'll get good at it, right? Like to be able to go do things and interact like that, I think is very important. And I think all of the examples most examples you guys gave, I think incorporated the idea of technology as interactive, right? Rather than just consuming. And so one thing I'm definitely very wary of, like I won't even watch professional sports. Like I hate commercials. Like I'm so wary of being like propagandized. And one point that I love that Sherry made earlier, which I'm always preaching, is like people are always like, oh no, I'm strong enough that I'm not going to be affected by this. Like, no, you're not. Like there's $1 billion of money that's going into tricking you into believing certain things, to buying certain things, to associating certain things with pleasure or pain or good or bad. Like you cannot
things.
like, you cannot train yourself with. And then of course the parents are like, I'm just going to send my kid to this person that absolutely hates me and them and everything I stand for, and I'm just going to like tell them on the like Sunday that like no, that's not right. That's not our value, son. Like no, that's not working. Like that doesn't work, and you're being overly prideful in your abilities and your control over your kid, because the only way you can do that is you like terrified your kid into believing everything you tell them, right? They're gonna step in line with the community of their school and their friends and their teachers, because most teachers are kind of like interesting people, and people don't grow up hating their teachers. They like the friends, they want to fit in. Like that's a natural thing. So if you put them in a community where that's what everybody thinks, they're gonna most likely fit in, or they're gonna have a miserable time. So like you choose, right? You can't just train that out of them and de-educate them at the times they're not there. It doesn't work that way. And the same happens with propaganda that we have through our commercials that we watch, through the heroes that people present to us, like commercials, all this stuff. It all affects our children. It affects us. So like I have ad blockers and everything I could possibly imagine. Like there's like an ad that pops up, I just shut the website down. Like I'm not like.
Also, you have to wonder, like, well, your kids are going to go to you, like, well, if these people are always telling me what's wrong, why are they sending me here? Like, it kind of undermines yourself as a parent. Like, if everything, like, you're having to unindoctrinate, as much as you possibly talked about earlier in the show, how that's not possible, and the effects on them, then they're going to get old enough to go, well, why don't you care enough to get me out of this situation? Like, come on, like that's really undermining yourself as a parent, and to have to reteach them, why do that to your kids? It seems so unfair that they have to. It's part of learning, and this is something that as a girl I've always hated. It's part of learning that I have to be this way with these people and this way with these people, and have to get along and be nice. And it's like, no, you fucking don't. Be yourself. Let the chips fall where they may. Like, within reason. I'm not saying just be a jerk to everybody, but like, it was when I finally decided I was an anarchist. At first I kept it kind of quiet because I was worried what people would think, and it's scary and everything. And then I listened to that speech by Larkin Rose that you're not the boss of me. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's amazing. He did it on 4th of July at Capitol Hill. And I was like ready to kick down doors after that. And then I was like, you know what? I want people to know what I am. I don't go around just blasting it, but I don't shy away from it if it comes up, if people ask me, because I want them to know, well, the government propaganda machine or whoever is saying that anarchists are out there and they're scary people, but I know that anarchist, and she's not scary, and she's pretty normal and lives down there and maybe has some odd ideas, but we have to start doing that. And that's part of what I think you're saying with like schools, that we have to start like actually taking the action to get our kids out of there, to get their minds back. And let them have their own minds and have their own passions and develop those. And I'm totally for that. I think kids have to like develop their own passions in their own direction. And it's a beautiful thing when you can step back as a parent and quit worrying about trying to figure out their life for them and let them figure it out and just coach them through it. The things that they do. And my son wants to build an air conditioning unit this year. Not because,
awesome.
And he is not because he has to do it for school or anything else. He's interested in air conditioning units. And
which by the way, if you listen to the mainstream media, he's contributing to the destruction of the planet. I just want to know.
Right. Of course.
He's evil now. You understand that, right? Like,
yeah.
You're not allowed to have a private air conditioner. Never mind build your own.
Right. Well, he's an anarchist, so he's already a domestic terrorist. So there you go.
That point, Sherry, like this happened with my son because I sent him to school in third grade with me. Is like there was a lot of things he was really interested in. Like he's a tinkerer. My dad's an engineer, and he definitely gets a lot of that from him. But like when you're at school all day long, then you come home and you're like, I don't have time to go tinker around with whatever. So like, I just want to chill. Like I was in school all day, and that's fine, right? Like just chilling is an important thing to do. And like,
you have time from all the homework. Like,
yeah, I mean, we don't really. So yeah, he and when he got home, he was like, yeah, I want to play with my siblings. Like, I want to go, it's nice outside. I'm going to go do that. I'm like, yeah, go do that. Of course. Like, I don't care if you get your homework done, like figure that out. Like give your kid permission to like be a kid, right? Like, yeah, they're like in college and you're spending this amount and then they're professional school. Like, yeah, whatever. That's different. Like, dude, they're 5 years old. They're 10 years old. Like they have to go climb a tree. They have to get outside. They come home and they have too much homework. Tell them to screw it. Like, go do something else. Like, it's fine. It doesn't matter what your kid gets in 6th grade math or whatever else. Who cares? It doesn't matter.
I used to be a neocon, right? I'm way back in the day, and I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh religiously. Like I was a Rush babe, y'all. I loved it. And so I remember him talking about on one of his shows, they did this thing where they have the man on the street kind of ask questions from like an 6th or 8th grade exit exam. I forget what it was, from the 1800s. Right. And people couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. And those people were not sitting in classes all day figuring out how to learn these things. Like they got the core down. Like their parents taught them what they needed. A lot of it was, I'm not a Christian, but a lot of it was biblical, based on the Bible, learning to read, learning those stories, memorizing, like you said, and math. Reading, writing, arithmetic, right? Like that's what they did. And they did it. And when they were competent, they said, okay, go work on the farm, go do whatever it is, apprentice something. Like that's really the natural way of things. And I love the left that would hate this so much. Like that's really the natural way. They have this, like, they really want the natural stuff. Well, this is natural for people. It's how they learn. It's the best possible way. Sure, if there's a lot of times where you might need some help, you might need some schooling and something, but there are so many resources out there that do a far superior job than most public schools that there's not even that argument really, because there's so much out, even free stuff that will teach you exactly what you need to know.
Here's the thing. There might be a good trade-off with public school, right? If they were successful, like, you know what? Like I had to send my public school kids to public school and then they end up being geniuses and they make tons of money and they're like really smart. Mm-hmm. Like, no, they fail at it. It's like, what are you sacrificing their soul for, right? Like, it's one thing if you go to engineering school or law school, it's miserable, right? Like you bust your ass wherever else, like, okay, but I'm going to get a law degree, or I'm going to get a doctor. Whatever. Like, what are you getting out of your 5th grader, busting his ass, doing extra homework, whatever? Like, what do you think you're getting out of this? Like, this how is this even a trade? They're not even good at the thing they're doing. Because you just said you can learn all this stuff at far better, far more effective means. Like the bad and it's like the Aristotelian point, right? Or Platonic point, right? The good and the effective are the same thing all the time. Like if you want your kids to be healthy, good, and all these other things, you're going to end up doing good moral things for them as well, and they're going to grow up to be good people. Like these all fit together. But I don't point to your question about the technology. Just I think technology should be a tool that is used intentionally. So like if it's just like something that's there because, and I mean, I do this all the time, like, okay, I'm bored, I'm just going to go look at my phone, right? Like, oh, let me just see what's going on, right? Like that type of thing, I think especially dangerous or for anybody, but like for a kid that just has unfettered access. So like what we do personally is we have a computer that's in the living room and that everybody can see what's going on. And all my kids are pretty young at this point. Like David's 14, but like you're not using the computer and people don't know what you're doing on it. And I don't like the idea like someone just like going off and doing something on their own that's not part of the family. Like when you're here, you're part of the family. We're doing things together. If you want to go read a book in your room or whatever else, but like I'm not letting my kid take an iPad into his room. Like that's just not happening. So they play games on there, and then someone else can go over and, oh, cool, you're playing this game. Oh, you're doing this, whatever. And it leads to a lot of interesting conversations. Oh, yeah, you're looking at that. That's interesting. Remember my grandpa used to do it all the time. He'd be looking at stuff, and I would come by. Oh, yeah, you're reading that story. Oh, yeah, I saw that. What's going on with this? Or he'd play chess, and I'd watch over his shoulder, and we'd talk about it or things like that. So I think it should be something that leads to unity in the household, leads to conversation, leads to good things happening, right? If it ends up being something that's like it leads to people leaving the family and being isolated and not building that type of community, I think it could be deleterious. Obviously, there's times where, I think especially for an older kid, where they just need time to have their own space, things like that. I haven't gotten there yet personally with my kids, but I could see an argument for an older kid needing that time for private conversations and things like that. But my 12-year-old girl's not getting on the internet by herself. That's just not
Well, so that's interesting. I love that solution to it, making it more of like a communal thing, or like there's actually something we can talk about in the future in terms of there's a pretty nerdy concept out there of like self-assembling systems where people in abject poverty and removed from, quote unquote civilized society can teach themselves amazing things with these kind of like self-assembling systems. But that's really nerdy, maybe a different episode down the line. But I want to get Brandon back into the mix in terms of like your personal tack there. You'd mentioned COVID is kind of like some of the catalyst for making this move. What was it that was really kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back? I mean, what aspect of the either the reaction to COVID or what you saw as the educational process for your child as a result of COVID that really kind of like put you over the hump, so to speak, in terms of homeschooling?
No, it wasn't COVID. It wasn't really COVID. We had already started thinking about it before all that went down.
Oh, okay.
That was just kind of gave us the opportunity to really try it out while he was still enrolled in public school, because the online stuff was silly. So I said, all right, I'm going to do my own thing, and started doing it, and it worked out just fine. But yeah, the catalyst was more going into kindergarten and them not wanting him to go into first grade where he should be. Now he's doing third and fourth grade math, which he would be going into second grade this coming year.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's really awesome.
And that's what that was kind of the thing. I saw his potential that was going to be squandered because they weren't going to let him do third and fourth grade math in first grade. He'd just be sitting there going the whole year, well, I got to do the same stuff over and over that I already know, and just gets repetitive, and he gets bored. And I feel like that's when kids start acting out, is when they're bored because they're not being challenged for the most part.
Well, so from your beats, what would you say is like one or two of the most important things for parents like getting going, right? Like, so what steps could they take at the beginning? Maybe it was something that you learned that you had like a misstep at the beginning, or maybe it was something that just really worked out from the get-go that you guys implemented.
Not really any missteps. I mean, do your research, find curriculum that fits, look into different curriculums, talk to other homeschoolers. That's what I joined all these homeschooling groups before we were doing that, so I could ask any of these questions. That's probably, and then just ask any questions you have. I mean, everybody in all the groups are very helpful with answering anything that I had concerns with. Know the laws. Know your laws of your state. I'm in Missouri. It's pretty, I think, pretty lax. I don't really know the laws of other states or anything, but it seems like we don't have to report to anybody. We're required to record a certain amount of hours. We just have to keep a little logbook, and we have 600 core hours and 400 non-core. But nobody comes by and checks our logbook. That's basically if you have to go to court because a rare stupid reason you have a nosy neighbor that says these kids are never going to school and calls the child protection services or something like that. But so yeah, know your laws, what you need to have recorded, what needs to be saved, and all that stuff, and join groups and ask questions.
Yeah,
those are probably the most important things.
I would say that anyone who who is like homeschooling curious, unschooling curious, or whatever, just do a Facebook search. You will find a ridiculous number of groups and communities online. To anyone who's like, oh, your homeschooler is not going to be socialized, dude, my kids know freaking everyone. There was like thousands of kids that show up to the different co-ops, and to the point earlier, all different age ranges and stuff like that. The bullying doesn't exist because parents actually give a crap, and they figure it out, like in the groups and stuff like that. What's funny is when you were saying that, Brandon, so we talked a little bit about regulation beforehand and how like all the 50 states have kind of like different levels of regulation as far as homeschool goes. Me personally, I think the biggest thing that could be done for personal liberty and freedom in the United States and throughout the entire world is just completely deregulating homeschooling. I think any regulation on homeschooling is completely preposterous. As soon as you started talking about like, logging hours and stuff, Dave and Mike started to like smirk like Cheshire cats when it came down to it, because first of all, we're really lucky being kind of like Jersey guys. New Jersey is one of the only states in the country where there's nothing. Like if you want to, like, the state doesn't know my kids exist short of their social security number, because I never had to register them as homeschooled, and they never had to register for regular school. I don't have to file a curriculum. I don't have to show proof of anything. The only thing is you have to do the CYA stuff in case some like, nosy Karen is like, oh, well, that kid's being abused. They're not learning anything, right? But what was your visceral reaction, Rufo, when when Brandon said like logbook and stuff like that?
It's just typical state control, right? Like, you gotta log exactly what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, because Big Brother needs to know. It's like, get out of here, dude. You don't need to know anything. Leave me alone. Like, I'm raising my child because I don't need you to raise my child for me. I'm sorry that puts a kink in your armor and disproves your legitimacy. I don't know what else to tell you, man. It's
also a type of thing you only get punished for, like gun control. Like, only an honest person ever gets in trouble there, right? Like, anybody can do like 5 hours today, 6 hours the next day. Like, dear diary, today I did 20 hours.
And I think
you can fill your logbook out all you want. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, oh no, you didn't really do it.
Yeah, this isn't like school where you're like going to the airport or something. Like, this is just my house. Like, yes, Mr. Maxim checked off that this is the number of hours today. Like, so the only way you can ever get in trouble is like if you rat out yourself, right? And then the government somehow figures out like you ratted on yourself, your logbook doesn't show up right. Like, so the only way anybody can get in trouble is if they're being honest, which I find just like an incredibly terrible law, right? To set into place, and especially when you're governing the relationship between a parent and their kids. Like, get the fuck out of here, man! Like that.
I think it's more insidious than even that. Like, that's the thing. It's making sure that you remember that we're in control.
That's exactly
that we get the say, and that we meaning the government. Like, we are the people that are allowing you to do this. Like, it's not just like the way things are and you're right to do it, like it actually is, but they want to, and every turn they want to make sure that you remember who you are and put you in your place. Tennessee is it's moderate. We can register with the county, or we can register with an umbrella school is what they call it, which is a private school that we'll say, yeah, we'll vouch for them. And we turn in our attendance and grades. That's all I have to do is turn them into the umbrella school, because I don't want to deal with the government. So I deal with them. But I think that's really the thing that they're saying there is that we're allowing this for you. I think Texas is like what you guys are saying. They don't have any requirements. You don't have to report. I think California also, you don't have to report. If I remember correctly, this is from several years ago, which surprised me that in California, they're pretty lax about the homeschool rules. If you're actually unenrolled, it's worse. Like, I had a friend whose children were doing the at home public school there because of COVID. And that was worse than just actually homeschooling. The requirements were more difficult and strenuous, and just unenrolling them completely and have your own curriculum. So knowing the rules is really important, but we just have to remember that the rules are there to let us know that we're not in charge and our kids don't actually belong to us, right? Like the conservatives that love the public school system are advocating for this thing that is supposedly where they love you more than you do. They love your kids more than you do, and they know what's better for them than you do, and they want you to know at every point that you're just the parent, right? We're just letting you take care of your kids. So I think that's part of the really insidious nature of the logbooks. Like, I'm going to do anything that most parents love their kids. I know the government would love you to think that you have to have the government because people would just abuse their kids left and right if they didn't. CPS is a needed service because everybody just doesn't know how to raise their kids, right? And that's why so many people want them to go to the indoctrination camps. But I have a suspicion that most people actually love their kids and want to do what's best for them. And it's often not at cross purposes with what the government wants for them.
That reminds me of, and I'm sorry, we didn't mean to like single you out, Brandon, or anything like that, but like you're the new guy, so we had to haze you a little bit.
No, it's crazy how the moms in the Facebook groups, they're that's like the main thing is they're nonstop posting. Can I count this for this hour? Can I count this for this subject? What do you think?
Yeah,
That's like the main thing is they're so scared, and I want to post on there and be like, do you people really like think you need to log this stuff and anybody's gonna know? But then I'm afraid I'm gonna put on some list of.
But no, you're right.
Logging.
It's meant to induce
Brandon,
fear.
you're already on a list. We know you are.
That's what they want. That's exactly the mentality they wanted to have. Just like they gave you the mentality of, no, of course your kid can't go to first grade. He has to follow our rules and stay in kindergarten. It's the same concept. Like, okay, fine, you don't want to come to our school, but you're going to check in with us, or you're going to keep this log, or else we're going to put you in a cage.
I mean, that's true, though. Like, I was speaking with someone at a homeschool convention once from the Homeschool Legal Defense Fund. I mean, there's a thing, HSLDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and he was telling me about a situation where they especially target minorities. You might be surprised to find out, but that these children, departments, whatever they are in your area, they came to this woman's door. Some neighbor had reported that her kids weren't going to school. She answered the door. She was in the middle of doing laundry. She left the cap off the bleach to go and answer the door. And she let them in their house thinking, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I can let them in my house. And then, first mistake, right? First mistake was opening the front door, but the second was, but she had a few dishes in her sink from lunch that she hadn't cleaned up yet. She's a busy, homeschooling mom. And they found the cap off the bleach and took her kids from her and said she was creating a unsafe environment. And then her sister tried to advocate for her, helping her, and they took her kids too. And this was one of the cases they were dealing with. So they are right to be scared. They are absolutely right to be scared. I don't think they should live their lives around that, but they will get you if they want you. Some of these places are so.
They're going to get you either way. Then the log, and whether you log that hour for a core or not a core, is going to make no difference, right? So right. The number one thing they should have is like so much fear. Like, you're not coming into my house, right? Like, get worse for one. Like the amount of trust that these people have for state agents is why we have all these problems to begin with, right? Like, if you just say no to government, it becomes much harder for them to do any of these things, right? Like, oh, okay, fine. Like, we're going to come back then and we're going to get you. Like, okay, fine. You can come back. I'm going to clean my house and make sure it's spotless. I'm going to make sure.
It'll be on my terms then, not yours.
Right. I'm going to have a camera here, whatever else, right? Like, you can do all those things, right? And you have to make it as difficult as possible for the state to implement their dreams, right? And like, I'm not going to resist to some cop if he comes to my door, because guess what? He's got me, right? Like, but like, I'm going to make it as hard as possible for them to do their job, right? I'm not going to just be like, yeah, come look around my house and see if you can find anything illegal that you might think I'm doing, right? Like, 0% chance, right? Like,
that's just the naivete of most statists. I mean,
a lot of homeschoolers are statists. It comes from the school, and the idea that people have to be afraid of living the people are afraid of themselves. Like, I might not be a good educator of my kids, but this random state agent will come here and take my kids from me right? Because I was doing the laundry and I answered the door. Like that's why it's I can never understand the mentality you were describing before, where people are like, oh, I don't know, I might mess my kid up. Like it should be flipped around the other way around, right? Like I don't know if I should send my kid to public school. It might really screw him up. Like, oh, and you should, if you are sending your kid to public school and that's working out for you, okay, fine. But like, you should be regularly checking in with that. Like, is this still working? Like, I don't know. Like this because it probably is not going to work long term. You should be continually checking to make sure that's right.
But that's the consequence of government indoctrination, like the education system. People thinking that being told that government schools, their monopoly on education is what's good for people, and so that's why they're afraid to do anything else. I mean, it takes time.
Well, that's why we live in the upside down. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, Mike, but that's why we live in the upside down, right? Yeah. Like for the pop culture reference, right? The government option was always the shitty one, right? Like it was the one that you were embarrassed to take. Now it's always the first one. It's like the default, and it's wrong. Like that's why I know Dave loves Mike Malice. Like that's why Mike Malice, pretty much the role that he fills for me, like as a consumer of his content, is to completely dismantle what the facade of what has been created. And the facade is that like state government actors are like the benevolent, amazing first choice, like the best one. And you're like, no, they're the worst. You should spit on them. Like you should literally like look at them as the worst possible case. And in every single scenario, if it's economics, like if you're going to borrow money, the last place you borrow money from is the government. If it's education, the last place you go. If it's food, the last place you go is the government. Like that's one of the things where it's like we live in the upside down. Good.
If it's to get a job, the last place you should be going is the government. I remember growing up, like people would be like, "Oh, he went to go take his civic service test." Like it wasn't like you were, like it wasn't like something. It was like your last ditch effort was to go take the civic service test because you weren't good enough to chop it up in the private sector.
Right.
Like that's who's teaching your kids, right? Like those are the people like they can't figure out how to make money in the private sector, so they need to use the government guns to force people to put money in their pocket. Like that's what that is, and that's how. I mean, that's what I thought it was growing up. And then now all of a sudden, like something switched in like the last 25 years where it's like super cool to work for the government and super cool to take government handouts and super cool to get the government cheese. Like, no, man, American cheese is actually really trash cheese. Like, you shouldn't. Like, it's literally government cheese. That's why it's called American cheese. It's not even cheese. It's cheese product. Like, no, you shouldn't eat American cheese. Like, it's government. Like, stop it.
Well, we're running on 3 hours. I feel bad because Brandon came in the last hour and we were already rolling. It was like it was like a steamroller going. But
can I ask Brandon a question real quick?
Yeah, go for it, Dave.
So you mentioned something earlier about games, like schooling or something like that. Did I catch that right?
Game schooling?
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's awesome because I'm like all about games. I think
there's a movement called the game schooling movement.
I've never heard of this. Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it's just using games to tie in things that you're learning about. I mean, I'm a big board game nerd, so and I would get like games that are made for like 14-year-olds and older. I'm like, come on, buddy, let's play this. So I need to be a little bit more conscious because he'd be like, I have no idea what's happening here. So. But like, there's a game called Agricola, which I bought for when we were learning about farming and our whole plant thing. That was pretty fun. He liked that. We read The Hobbit, so I got the board game version of The Hobbit from Fantasy Flight Games. I think made that one. So just trying to tie in things like that, or like when we were learning about ancient Greece, I got the Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Mm-hmm. That was, I mean, a beautifully made game. They did all this research with historians and everything and recreated ancient Greece so he could take his character and run around ancient Greece and see how they lived. He got pretty into the game part, completing quests and stuff, but it was still learning about ancient Greece through Assassin's Creed. Yeah. And it also has a side thing that is pretty cool where your quests are to find ancient sites and things in there. That's, you don't kill people in that part, but it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, just using different games. I mean, you can find a game that fits pretty much any topic you're learning about. And I like to throw those in just to add that fun aspect in, while still learning about what we're learning about.
Yeah, no, that's a big thing that I'm like always annoyed by, because like I think games like the best thing ever for learning like anything. Like if you take Magic the Gathering players, like some of the best ones, like they go and work at hedge funds and stuff. Like people that are good at games are good at life, right? Like you know how things work. You know how to balance costs and benefits. You know how to do all these wonderful things. Like you know how to negotiate with people and not get screwed over. Right? Like they were just wonderful. And then like the school's like, no, those are games. And like, no, this is real learning over here. And it's like, it's actually the other way around. Like, games is the practical implementation of your knowledge, and you test it against other people. It's like physically wrestling against someone, right? Like games is like the mental aspect of that. Right? Like I'm going to mentally wrestle with you in this arena here, right? And like see who's better or whatever else. Like, that made me think of the question that Matt asked about electronics, because one thing I love doing is playing video games. Like I think that's because of the communal aspect of it, right? Like someone could be sitting there playing a video game, someone else is watching them, right? And it's like, oh, cool, no, go that way, no, don't go there. Like, oh, you did the triple jump and it didn't work, right? Like the ability to talk about it while someone's playing it is super fun, right? Or like you play GoldenEye with my kids will play GoldenEye with each other because I have my N64 still, and like they're all going through trying to shoot each other and like, oh, we're gonna get that person, like the strategy, and like it's so interactive, and I just like the communal aspect of it, and the ability to think through things and to like just work through ideas, right? Try different things. Try, like you were saying, like a different loadout. Like, oh, don't do that. It's not going to work. That loadout's too slow or whatever. You're not going to be able to do. Like all those little tricks and the trade and those things like that. Those are just so wonderful for a kid to be aware of and to learn. All those different things are so deep. Like to just keep digging down and to learn more and to learn different strategies. I'm going to try it on that way. Like they're just wonderful, and the creativity of all that. Like you don't have an opportunity in real life. Like you can't go play paintball every day, right? But like you can go on and you can play this game every day, and you can get better at it over time, and you'll see that competency rise. And to Sherry's point earlier about self-worth and self-esteem, like that comes from competency. Competency builds self-esteem. So if you can teach your kid to be good at something, and they know that they're good at something, not because you told them, but because they know their laundry is clean at the end of the day. And now I have clean clothes just like mom used to make me, or my room is clean. This is nice that my room's clean. My bed is made. Whatever it is, I mowed the lawn, right? Like, I know I did a good job, and this is great. Like, giving the kid that sense of competency is what leads to their sense of self-esteem. What doesn't lead to it is some teacher in the front of the room saying, you got a 95 on the test, and that is an A, because that's between a 90 and 100 on this arbitrary test I gave you, and now I'm giving you the competency pass, right? And they learn that it doesn't matter what I actually think about the material, because there's a lot of kids do well on the test, and they're like, I didn't think I knew that well, but oh my gosh, I got a 95. Like, okay, that's not good, right? Like, we want to push themselves. So anyway, those like all kind of tied together in my mind, and I just wanted to.
What you're talking about, though, is really the central planners, right? The central planning of education is that this is where we do education, and this is what we do now, and this is what we need. And whereas what you're talking about with games or any other kind of outside of that system is spontaneous order. That's anarchism. That is anarchy, right? That doing that and figuring out what that person needs, it's bottom up. It's from the individual up rather than, so as me as the parent, I know what my kids are interested in. So I make sure that they have opportunities to do those things that they're interested in, and they learn through that. So I think that's the difference, is the central planner versus spontaneous order.
And I think the gaming with your kids, it's like an opportunity that a lot of parents dismiss or pass up. Like when I play Fortnite with my son, the other kids, when my son's always like, oh, my dad's going to join our team. And they're always like, what? Your dad?
Yeah.
Dad's going to play Fortnite with you? And he's like, well, yeah. And I'll get on, and they're all the other kids think it's the coolest thing in the world that my son's dad's playing with him.
Right.
And it just, my son, just seeing him like light up because I'm there joining him on this mission to win a victory royale. It's like, it's the greatest thing, instead of just being like, oh yeah, you go play your silly game. That's dumb. He sees me get into it, and it's bonding time, which sounds silly, but I mean, we do other things together, but that's one part of it that we can do together. And I'm not just pushing him into a room by himself saying, go entertain yourself. I'm partaking in his.
Right. It's a communal activity. And one thing that I want to is one of my biggest pet peeves is that you have to be made to feel silly about that. Or other people, like grown men, don't want to say like, yeah, I played Fortnite with my kid, or I played Call of Duty, or I played these games, because there's an embarrassment. But it's somehow okay for some dude to be like guzzling down a 30-pack with his son watching some other world-class athletes on the screen, and like that's super masculine and awesome. Like, but like playing a game with your son, like, and other people that everybody's having a good time with is somehow like a sissy thing to do and weak. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, that's like the cultural norm, right? Is just like, no one questions it though, right? Like I tell my students, like, oh yeah, I'm going to play a Magic the Gathering tournament with my kids. Like, oh wow, it's such a stupid thing. I'm like, okay, what do you do with your dad on the weekend? I'm like, okay, good point.
The average man spends 30 minutes a week with his child.
Yeah.
Soak that in. Soak that in. Like that's
I got
an amazing thing.
from this week.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Mike is the living embodiment of someone who made a hard decision to spend more time with his kids. And I'm not discounting the other dads that are on the broadcast, but I know for a fact, like Mike, you made a hard decision, and quite frankly, it's one that I need to make because I run a business, and then I do this and other stuff, and it's like before you know it. To Sherry's point, you're like, holy crap, like I haven't seen my kids in 4 days, right? And you walk in the door and your kids are like, oh, hi dad, like whatever, like you haven't been here. Like other like the and you want to be wanted, right? So like when you walk in and it's been 4 days and your kids are like, oh, hi dad, whatever. Like my 4-year-old, she's like, it doesn't matter. It could have been like 6 months. She would be like, oh, daddy, but the older kids are like, they adapt, right? And I think some dads might kind of like take offense maybe or take it personally, and they'd be like, oh, well, why is it I'm walking in and like no one cares that I'm here or anything? Well, because you freaking haven't been there, right? Like, and I've had to check myself on that repeatedly. What's funny is my wife chiming in, she's like a freaking angel for me because she's home most of the time with the kids and also working remotely. But I'm definitely going to try and hook up getting some unschooled adults on here, which, by the way, earlier in the broadcast, Magnus Panvidia, who accused Mike Ruffo of being part of the Boog.
I'm not part of anything, bro. I have a really cool shirt. All right, I like these really cool shirts. I'm comfortable. It's nice. I feel like I'm on vacation when I'm wearing one of these.
If you're watching from. If you're watching from the FBI, he's not part of the organization.
Listen, this is that jersey. James Gandolfini. I should be wearing like a white tee underneath this with a big gold chain and a cigar. That's what it should
be. Magnus came from kind of like a communal upbringing, which that dude's more put together than I think most people have ever talked to or been around. So, but yeah, definitely something that needs to be worked out. But look, some dads, like, it's tough. You need to spend more time with your kids. Like, you got to find a way. Like, I understand that we live in a culture where it's like, you got to be the breadwinner and you got to bring home money and all this other stuff. Or, they're trying to.
None of that matters. None of that matters. Here's the way I looked at it, right? We could be living a super comfortable life, by the way. Like, it could be super comfortable. Nurses in Jersey make really good money. Managing a car dealership, you make a lot of money. Like, we could be living a really, really comfortable life, but I'm choosing to live a less comfortable life because I recognized there was moments in between when she first started school and at the end of first grade where I was like, all right, something is off here. I'm never around. Like, she's got everything she wants. You know what she doesn't have, though? Her father.
I think she really wants.
The one thing she needs more than anything in this world at this point in her life, she didn't have. I was like, I got to make a decision. And the best thing for me to do is it's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be the rock. Like, I want to be the rock, but not financially. Like, because I recognize I don't need all of the stuff I used to have. Right? I talked about it earlier. Like, I don't need to go to Starbucks every day. Nescafe is an awesome instant coffee that tastes delicious, and I promise you'll get used to it really fast.
I don't know about that one, Mike.
All right, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I just really like it. I don't know why, but nonetheless, like, but to be serious, like, There's gonna come a time when she's an early teenager or a teenager, and she wants nothing to do with it. And I don't want all of the time to go by where she wants everything to do with me and me not be there. You know, I got tired of watching Halloween from my cell phone. I got tired of watching her hockey games from my cell phone. I just got tired of watching my daughter grow up on my cell phone. And I wanted to be part of her growth. So that, yeah, I made hard decisions because this is the most important time in her life for me to be there.
And that's a really heroic thing. Like, that's a real heroic thing when you do something, sacrifice something so that your family can have better, your kids can have better, not the public school teacher or the cop or whatever. Those are not heroes. Like, doing something that actually costs you, you have to make a choice, right? That's a heroic decision.
100%. 100%. So, look, we're going on 3 hours. This has been awesome. When I first thought of the idea of going for 3 hours, I was like, how the hell are we going to make 3 hours and not like fall down dead? But I think this group, like, we could do another hour and a half if y'all wanted, but I'm not going to hold you to it. Look, we're going to have you guys back too, because homeschooling, unschooling, whatever you want to call it, deschooling, it's a journey, right? Like, it's not like a single moment in time. So I would love to have you all three of you back on, and kind of talk about how things are evolving and changing and whatnot. But last thoughts, like let me ask the question. I'll start with you, Brandon, and we'll go around the circle. Do you think that someone should, at the very least, look into homeschooling their kid?
Yes.
Succinct. I love it. Go ahead, Sherry. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you owe it to yourself, and you really owe it to your kids, and it's, for me, I understand the trepidations that might be there, but I think it's one of the best decisions I ever made in my entire life. And it's something I would never go back on, even the days when it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Like, I tell people, like, you should know it's the hardest thing you'll ever do, and it's the best thing you'll ever do, right? So for me, there's no turning back, and I hope to impart that to everyone, that the good that you do for your kids far outweighs any of the hardships or sacrifices that you make.
Awesome. Mike?
It's the most amazing thing I've done in my entire life. Outside of getting married and having my daughter, actually raising my daughter has been the best thing that I've ever done. So you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your children, and for all of you collectivists out there, you owe it to the community to raise a better child and less of a trauma. So, but honestly, you owe it to yourself and your kids. Just look into it. There's something you can do it. I know you can do it. You 1000% have the ability. And there's a million resources out there, including the 5 people on this screen that'll be more than willing to help give you advice on things you can or cannot do, or what you should do, or best practices that we've discovered over time.
I think people's main concern is always scheduling. They don't have the time, and nobody realizes how little time a child is actually educated, if you want to call it that, in public school. There's literally minutes of one-on-one time.
That was the biggest epiphany I had when we started. I was like, oh wow, I'm doing an entire day's worth of work in 3 hours. This is a lot.
If not a little bit less. When
right,
other things here and there. I mean,
I tell people you can do it after work. You don't gotta quit your job. You can do it after work. Like if you get home at 5 o'clock, you can do it between the hours of 6 and 8 and be done for the day. And then on the weekends, just go out on field trips and stuff. Like, it's not that crazy. I promise you. It's a lot easier than you think. Just start doing the research.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that is a huge point, Brandon and Mike. It's like I think people overestimate the amount of education hours, and I'll actually reclassify that as minutes that happen during an actual school day. Not to mention the fact that we can also talk about the amount of time that is effective education time that's performed at school. But Dave, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I'll just say this one last thing, and this is something from some starting your own business and when you start to be an entrepreneur and stuff, and Matt might even know a little bit about this, but there's 168 hours in a week. If you don't think you have the time to homeschool, to teach your own child and get through the schooling of your own child, write down everything you do every day and how many hours in the week you actually fill, and look how many hours you actually waste doing stuff that you really don't need to be doing that you could replace schooling your child with.
Oh, hell yeah.
I promise you have like this really big, and you'll be like, oh my God, I got like 4 hours a day I can use for my child instead of X, Y, and Z. I promise you there's 168 hours in a week. Start breaking down your week. I'm telling you, day by day, you won't even fill it.
Just look how much time you're on social media. You'll find the time real quick.
Yep.
A lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like, even just thinking about it that way, like I appreciate your advice and what you're saying, but like I think it's just like completely wrong way of looking at it. Like every minute they're not in that place is already a place, like that's already a minute saved. So like
It's true.
That's like, it's not a matter of replacing what the school is doing, which again is why I hate that term so much. It's like, just get rid of that. Like, it's like, stop harming your kids. And you've already done so much, as I've like already said, and I'm not joking, like just letting them play sports outside, or like letting them play games, and like just letting them be around you. Like I have 8 kids. My oldest kid comes to school with me. My other 7 are home with my wife, and she does all the things that you normally do in an everyday life when you have a big family. And they cook together, they play games, and they do different things. They go to the store, they go to the park, they do lots of things. Like, we don't have any curriculum that we've ever used. Like we didn't do any research. We didn't do anything. Like, obviously I'm a teacher, so like I have more of like knowledge of how those things work, I guess. But like, I'm really not concerned. Like, as Sherry was saying before, I think like get them to read, get them to like learn how to write, and maybe like basic addition. Like, I'm a math teacher. Like, I'm telling you, it's fine. Like, you just get them to basically like know how to do 5 + 3 by the time they're like 8, and they're probably going to be fine. Like, now they're interested in it. Like, my kid, like my son Leo is 6 and he loves math. He loves doing hard problems. Awesome. Give it to him. Right. Like, but like, don't worry about like you didn't get to this certain thing, or you didn't follow the right curriculum, or you didn't follow the right, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Okay. Like, just pay attention to your kid, spend time with them as best you can. And if it's like, like, I remember my uncle, I used to stay with him over the summer, and he would bring me to work with him, and I didn't really interact with him at all for the most of the time. Like, I just went to the office with him, and it was the best thing ever. Like, I would go like for a few days to his office and just like kind of wander around aimlessly as like a little 12-year-old in the office and see what was going on. You know, like, it was cool to be there. It's fun, right? Like, just have your kids just being around you while you're doing your everyday activities is fun for them. Like, they want to be with you. They want to be there, and you want to be with them. Like, you want to be there. So even if you're working from home, I know it's hard for people if you're working at retail or something like that, obviously to bring your kid to work, that's not going to work. But like, as soon as you possibly can, try to build your life in such a way that you can just be with your kids. They can be around you. You can be in the other room with them, and whatever, they're playing some chess on the computer, and you're, oh yeah, hey, what's going on? Oh, you did that, and you can do something, right? Try to live your life in a way that allows for those types of things. That's what we mean by liberty, right? That's what's going to ultimately make us ungovernable and lead to the fact of the state not being important to our lives, because we can succeed without it, which is the same reason the Roman Empire fell. Because
I think there can be a step, though, right? Like, there's a step. What he's saying is that most people who are coming into homeschool who aren't sure, they don't know, they are going to be scared, and it's okay. You can figure it out. You can figure out the time, you can figure it out. And then you start to realize how much of that was just a sheer waste of time. So I think you come to that point of view, but for new people coming in, like, it can be scary, and it can be a little, not everyone is so self-assured about their ability to teach.
No, I agree.
They've been undermined and told that. So yeah, you got to have that just do it, and then you'll start to realize what you're saying is that so much of it is just unnecessary anyways.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, more than anything, just do it, and don't worry about don't make the perfect the enemy of the good, and just know, like, you're gonna screw up, right? Like, that's how relationships work. Like, if you've been friends with anybody for any amount of time, like, you've screwed up being a good friend to them, right? Like, that's just how life works, right? You had something mean, you were, hey, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it that way, and you go back. Kids are so resilient.
Like, you in public school keep magnifying, though, whereas as a parent, you could just say, oh, whoops, I messed up, but let's fix it.
That's my favorite part of doing the whole thing. It's like, oh, look at that, Daddy messed that one up. Hold on, let's start over. And then you know what she learned? You know what she learns, though? Oh, it's okay to make mistakes.
Yes.
Because we learn from failure, right? We can't become better until we actually fail. So just do it exactly how Dave has said. you will fail, and you'll become better because of it.
Right.
And your kids will be better because they'll realize it's okay to fail.
And some of the real gold here is something that Dave and Brandon were talking about too, was sometimes the kid becomes the teacher. That is the most amazing thing possible. Like, I was lucky in college to have professors that didn't believe in like teaching to the test and just the process. They believed in the substance. And they were big believers in, if you can teach it to someone else, you own that knowledge, right? So like, if daddy's helping you, if mommy's helping you, and they don't know, and you can teach it to them, you own that knowledge, right? Like, you know that enough to be able to impart it to someone else. And that should be, like, if that's what you're passionate about, that's the level that you should be, like, to devolve into more malicisms, but the key indicator of a midwit is someone who like can regurgitate a definition but can't teach anyone anything, right? Like, that's the purest idea of someone who thinks they are intelligent, but all they have is data. They just have talking points, right? Like, if you can teach your kids to break something down to a layman and teach it to them, whether it be a video game, whether it be a board game, whether it be ice hockey, whether it be, graphic design and anime and stuff like that, if they can teach it, they own that material. Like, that's theirs forever. And that is an amazing, amazing thing. And that's the other thing is, do not be afraid as a parent to become the student. Your kids will teach you so much. You will be surprised. You'll be like, how did you do that? And they'll be like, oh, well, I did this, this, and this. And you're like, holy crap, like, I never even thought to do it that way. And that's a beautiful moment as well, because they'll come up with something that you never even anticipated. So yeah, this is, like I said, we could do another hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours on this. This is like incredible. We're going to have to do it again, but I'm going to give everyone a quick reminder. Like, comment, subscribe, share, upvote if you're watching on the blockchain. Help us out with any of those algorithms. I am going to tell everyone, follow at Brandon Brendel on Twitter, at Sherry Voluntary, at Rufo, the number 4 Congress. And then you got Dave and my handles for Twitter. All of us are pretty active on there. And look, I want to thank you all. Like, this has been fantastic. Brand new program, and this was like this was a pleasure. I'm loving this format. So, look, we'll have to do this again. And any final comments before I hit the go button?
Knowledge or education is the lighting of a fire, not the filling of a bucket. That's what you need to know.
Love that. Brandon?
Just do it.
Do it. Mike?
Do it.
Just get away from the state, baby. Get away from the state. Do it.
Forget about the logbook.
Yeah.
Bring a logbook. Just fill it out. It doesn't have to be real. They don't
Burn it. No, burn it. Just write stuff in it and then set it aside.
All right, Dave, I'll give you the last one.
What I all said, I can't improve on that. Good job, guys.
Have a good night. We will see you next Monday.
Yeah.